Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 5 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Anko. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. For the third day in a row, Tsunade was watching Naruto working on his new jutsu. She couldn't exactly see what kind of jutsu it would be, but she noticed that he was training from dusk till dawn without stopping. She had to admit that she was impressed with his determination. She just didn't understand why he would give everything he got to win this bet. Sure, she had provoked him a little and she had asked him to bet his dream. But people can find new dreams, so why risk everything for just one dream? Why risk his life for the title of Hokage? What was so good about being Hokage anyway? Maybe she could ask him, but something prevented her from approaching him. Today she would have a talk with Jiraiya about the blonde Hokage to be. She stepped back and turned to make her way to the village in search for her apprentice, who had already taken a liking to the boy. They had dinner together several times in the past few days, and she always said that Naruto was a kind and amazingly caring person. But when she asked about it, Shizune told her that if she wanted to know what she meant, she would have to find out for herself by talking to the boy. Seriously, Shizune was becoming stricter with the passing day. Just this morning she had berated her for drinking so much last night. For God's sake, she was an adult, she could do whatever she wanted. Still, Shizune had been with her through all these years and she was a great friend to have. She would never have survived without her. Reaching the hotel, she saw that Shizune was nowhere in sight, so she left again to find her perverted fellow Sannin. Though she would never admit to his face she respected Jiraiya as a shinobi, he was a Sannin for a reason and his strength was second to none. Even Orochimaru would have a hard time dealing with the Toad Sannin. Speaking of the snake, she would have to reward him with a good kick in the balls for using a resurrection technique on her great-grandfather and great-uncle to use them in battle against Sarutobi-sensei. He'd better come near her for a very long time. Shaking her head clear of such violent thoughts, she went to the one place she knew the pervert would be, the hot springs. Jiraiya was enjoying a nice quiet afternoon of doing research. The hot spring in the village wasn't big, but the number of beautiful girls in the village was good enough to entertain him. Also, the fact that none of them were kunoichi who could detect him was a bonus as well. He was currently writing a scene that would be a goldmine for his next book. This would be his best volume yet. Now if only he could get the drop on Naruto and Anko, he thought. Suddenly he felt a shiver run across his spine and he gulped. He knew that shiver and he knew exactly what had caused it as well. He slowly turned his head, hoping he was wrong. As he saw the world's strongest pervert basher, he realized this would hurt a lot. And now, Tsunade, don't do anything you would regret. Don't worry, pervert, I won't. As a matter of fact, I'll enjoy this very much. Tsunade said while slamming her fist in her palm. Seconds later, the most inhuman screams of pain known to mankind were heard in the village. Even some of the women at the hot springs enjoying themselves felt a moment of pity, but then they realized he was spying on them, so they started to cheer Tsunade on. After working out some of her frustrations on her ex-teammate, she dragged him to the nearest bar to get a drink. Jiraiya would be back to good health by the time they arrived, so it was all good. Entering the bar, she threw him in a seat before sitting down as well. Seriously, Jiraiya, don't you ever get tired of being a pervert? How could you ask or say such a thing? It's like I would ask you to stop gambling or stop being a medic. It just won't happen. Jiraiya happily said before grabbing the bottle of sake. Hey, that's mine, get your own, she said before she forcibly took the bottle back, to which Jiraiya ordered his own. So I'm guessing you have something to ask me if you drag me away from my precious research. Mention your research again in my presence and you'll lose something very valuable. But yes, I do have some questions. Fine, ask away. Tell me about the Gaki. What's his story? He's gained your interest, hasn't he? Jiraiya smirked. Very well, but I can't tell you all that much. I only met him during the month before the Chunin exams. Just tell me what you know. I don't understand him at all. He's not all that hard to understand actually. You know about his status as Jinchuriki, so you can guess how he grew up in the village. He wasn't exactly liked or loved. Sensei was at a time the only one who showed him kindness or encouragement. He was treated like dirt in the academy. Teachers ignored him or hindered his progress every way they could, so there's no mistake he was the dead last in his class. Jiraiya proceeded to tell her how Naruto was tricked into stealing the Forbidden Scroll and how he learned the Kage Bunshin in just a few hours. He told her how he kicked Mizuki's ass with said technique and how he met Anko and the start of his training in the Forest of Death. Wait, did you just say he mastered a Junin technique in just a few hours? I did. Naruto is someone like me, he's not a genius who understands everything from the start or someone who gets it right the first time. Naruto is someone who tries hard in everything he does and he learns by doing things again and again. Yeah, I remember how different you and Orochimaru were in that aspect. That's right, and Konoha is still fixated on people who are considered a genius. The rest is considered inferior to those called a genius, although things have changed for the better. Anyway, once he had a teacher who saw his potential. Naruto started getting stronger and stronger. He was one of the 2 genin who were promoted to Chunin, who both were considered slackers or weaklings, thanks to the way he fought in the finals and his actions during the attack. So the story about how he fought side by side with Sensei is true. Absolutely. I didn't witness the fight, but Sensei told me that without Naruto's help he would have lost. But why? Why does he want to become Hokage of a village that treated him so bad? I asked him the same question. He said that part of it was that to him showing those who didn't consider him worthy or ignored him would be the greatest revenge he could have. He also said that running away is something a coward does and that isn't who he is. He will face his problems head on and become the one the whole village turns to in time of need. A coward, huh? Tsunade, don't you think it's time to stop living in the past and start living in the present? I'm not telling you to forget Dan and Nawaki, far from it. I'm not even telling you to stop mourning them, only that maybe you need to move on. Like they would have wanted. Tsunade didn't answer but stood up and left the bar without saying a word to Jiraiya. He wasn't offended by her actions, he knew that she needed to think this through on her own. The last few days had been stressful for her, not only that but for the first time in years she started doubting herself. Jiraiya smiled and raised his cup. Sensei, you were about Naruto being the one who would get through to her. He said to himself. Right, enough interruptions, let's see if those beauties are still at the hot springs. Tsunade just roamed through the village with no real destination in mind, she just walked thinking about what she had learned about Naruto and how it reflected on herself. Thanks to her talk with Jiraiya she had gained some insight into the mystery that was Namikaze Naruto. Still she had many questions that she had no answer to, but those questions could only be answered by the one person she was slightly afraid to see right now. But it seemed her feet were betraying her as she noticed that she had arrived at the grounds where Naruto trained on his new jutsu. She looked around for the young shinobi but she didn't find him at first. Straining her eyes she saw him laying on the ground apparently sleeping or resting between training. She hesitated but went to join him, she needed to talk to him, she realized. Are you awake? Huh? Tsunade Bachan, what are you doing here? He asked, wondering what she wanted now. Don't call me that. I'm not that old, she said, bonking him on the head but not nearly as hard as she wanted. Whatever, so what can I do for you? I just had an enlightening conversation with Jiraiya about you. I want to know just who Namikaze Naruto is. You talked to Ero Sennin. How did you manage that without him turning the conversation in something perverted? Let's just say I have strong countermeasures. She smirked. I bet. So what do you want to know? Why don't you hate the village for what they've done to you? Why don't you resent your dad for sealing the Kyuubi inside you? The reason why I don't hate the village is simple, really. When I was a kid I always wondered why they didn't like me, I thought I did something wrong or bad. But one day Jichin came up to me and treated me to my first bowl of ramen. It was the nicest thing anyone had ever done for me. And from that day I considered him the one person I could always turn to in case I needed help. One day I asked if I was a bad person but Jichin told me I wasn't and that if I worked hard then one day I would be accepted by the village and seen as a true hero. Of course at that time I didn't know why I should be considered a hero, but it was enough for me to decide that one day I would be the biggest hero Konoha had ever known. And who's a bigger hero than the man who defeated the Kyuubi and saved the village? Tsunade was listening very closely to Naruto's words and she felt something stir inside her. The way he spoke, with such conviction and full of emotions, she couldn't help but feel impressed. So that's why you decided to become Hokage. Part of it yes, the other reason was that I wanted to make sure that nobody would ever have to live the way I did. Sandaime Jichin did everything he could to help me, so I convinced myself that if I were to become Hokage myself then I would be able to help others too. What about the fact that your dad sealed one of the strongest beings on the planet inside you? Oh, believe me, when I first found out I was pissed. I just didn't understand why it had to be me. But then I realized that he trusted me with the survival of the village and I felt kind of proud. Of course I didn't like it, but it felt really good to be chosen for such an important task. When I found out that Yondaime was my dad it made more sense to me than ever. Who could he trust more than his own child? My parents gave everything they had to protect the people they loved the most, and for that I'm immensely proud of my parents. But doesn't it get hard to deal with all that? Doesn't it bother you? It hasn't been easy, but look at it this way. If my dad didn't choose me I probably wouldn't have met Anko-chan, Kurenai-sensei and Team 8 who are my best friends, or even Ero Sennin and Yuan Shizune. I hate the Kyuubi as much as the next person, but it gave me the chance to meet the people I love most of all. It took away my parents, but it gave me a new family to love and care for, and for them I'll become the strongest shinobi ever so that they won't ever have to worry about me and that I can always protect them. While Naruto was talking, Tsunade was looking at him, and for a moment she thought she saw the images of her two most precious persons standing behind him smiling at her. Their smiles were everything she had ever wanted to see, and tears started forming in her eyes. In a way it seemed that their spirits were giving her a message to once again take a chance, to once again open her heart and let someone in. In that split second that she saw them she had made up her mind, she would stop running from the past and become the person they wanted her to be. She would protect the village Dan, Naoki and Naruto loved so much to risk everything for until the day Naruto would be ready to take her place. In her mind she said goodbye to her little brother and the man she had loved like no other and stood up. Naruto, please stand up. Why? What's the matter? Just do it and close your eyes. Naruto obeyed, thinking it would be best not to anger someone who could punch you into the next millennium, so he did as he was told. He got up and closed his eyes only to feel something being put around his neck. Before he could even ask what she was doing he felt his headband being lifted and the feeling of two soft lips kissing his forehead. He opened his eyes only to see Tsunade smiling at him. You won, Gaki, the necklace is yours. What? But what about my jutsu? I thought I needed to impress you. You did impress me, Naruto. You just didn't need a jutsu to do it. So what does this mean? What happens now? I guess now we go get Shizune and the pervert and start making our way back to Konoha since I have a job offer waiting for me. A job offer? Wait, you mean you agree on becoming Godime Hokage? Naruto asked, shocked. I decided to keep the chair warm until you're ready to take my place, Gaki. Until that day I will be the Godime Hokage. Naruto couldn't believe what he just heard. The women who only a week and a half before considered the title of Hokage something that you put out with the trash now decided to become the Godime Hokage, and not only that but she admitted and recognized that he had what it takes to become Hokage himself. He was astonished but immensely glad that she had agreed to the position of Hokage, seeing that the village needed a strong leader like herself. If she was anything like he thought she was, then the village would be in good hands for years to come. Come on, future Hokage, let's get back to the hotel. Right behind you, Godime Bachin. Naruto said, ducking under a punch. You better start showing me some respect, Gaki, I'm your boss now. I'll tell you the same thing I told Ero Sennin. Respect is earned, not given, but I guess I can at least try. Naruto joked before running ahead laughing. Tsunade just shook her head and started chasing him back to the village. She felt liberated, and for the first time in a very long time she felt happy, and she would do anything to keep that feeling alive. When they reached the hotel they went straight for Tsunade and Shizune's room to check if she was there. They almost demolished the door, both tumbling inside laughing loudly. Tsunade-sama, Naruto-kun, what is going on? Shizune said when she came to investigate the noise. Shizune Nichan, guess what? I won the bet and Tsunade Bachin decided to become the Godime Hokage. What? Is this true, Tsunade-sama? Yes, it's true. Now get dressed into something festive. We need to celebrate. Shizune hurried and changed into a more festive attire and joined Naruto and Tsunade. They went for a small detour to get Jiraiya to come as well. Of course Tsunade kicked him in face when they found him spying on a couple doing the horizontal mambo, but after that they entered the closest bar they could find. Once inside, Naruto started coughing and his eyes started watering from all the smoke caused by the people who were smoking. It took a bit of getting used to, but a few minutes later he was fine and joined the rest at their table. Tsunade had already ordered for everyone and gave a cup of sake to Naruto as well. Tsunade-sama, you can't give sake to Naruto-kun. He's too young for that. Shizune argued. Nonsense Shizune. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink. Besides, it's only this one time. Oh, alright, but only this once. Naruto was looking at the cup placed in front of him and wondered if he would like the taste of sake. He never had alcohol before, so he wasn't sure he should be drinking this. Nonetheless, this was a joyous occasion, so why not try it? He slowly put the cup at his lips and let the fluid enter his mouth. Unfortunately, he wasn't prepared for the effects and once again he started coughing and his face was burning red. Tsunade and Jiraiya were laughing like crazy while Shizune was patting him on the back hoping his coughing fit would pass. Naruto stopped coughing a few seconds later and glared at the two Sannin sitting in front of him. Why the hell do adults like this stuff? It burns and tastes horrible. What's wrong Gaki, not man enough to hold you liquor? Whatever Bachan, I'm not drinking any more of that stuff. I've seen what it does to Ero Sennin the morning after. Naruto ordered something else and they had a great time laughing and telling stories. Naruto was amazed at some of the stories Jiraiya and Tsunade were telling and he could help but respect them a little more. He knew they were strong and considered legends each in their own way, but still hearing it from the source is a lot different than reading or hearing about it. The bar they had chosen seemed to be very popular since it was packed with people. Naruto had seen all sorts of men and women enter and leave during the time they were there. There had even been some fights between some men who probably were fighting over the same girl. One group in particular stood out in Naruto's mind. As soon as they entered he knew they would be trouble and so far he had been right. The group picked fights with the other people and they were loud as hell. One of the men, obviously the leader judging by the way the others acted around him, had been staring at Shizune and Tsunade for quite a while now and frankly it was annoying Naruto. Both Shizune and Tsunade didn't seem to notice or they were ignoring him. Naruto guessed they were used to things like that. They were beautiful women after all. Still he had a feeling that things would become troublesome very fast. The leader got up and come over to their table and started to harass both of the women. At first they ignored him as much as possible and Naruto was itching to act but managed to stay calm. That was until the man put his arm around Shizune and pulled her close. Shizune recoiled from the stench of booze coming of the man and Naruto interpreted it that she was too scared to push him off. Before anyone could act, Naruto, who had been sitting next to her, pulled out one of his knives and placed it at a very important part of the male anatomy. The man visibly froze looking down at the knife. He then heard a terrifying voice whisper something in his ear. I would like it very much if you would keep your filthy hands of my friend. I'll count to 3 before I slice off what you deem so great. Needless to say the man didn't want to lose his little friend and backed off immediately returning to his table like he had seen a ghost. It didn't take long before he and his gang left the bar in search for other entertainment. He took a last look at Naruto's back and swore that he would have his revenge. All he had to do was wait until he was alone. Thank you Naruto-kun, but I can handle myself you know. I know but that doesn't mean you should have to Shizune Nichan. I despise men like him. Unfortunately Gaki, men like that are everywhere. Women have learned to deal with them a long time ago. But it was still a nice gesture. The incident was quickly forgotten and the evening was spent in a very good atmosphere and even Naruto had to admit that going out for a drink with friends actually was a lot of fun. He would have to introduce this concept to his genin friends minus the alcohol of course. A few hours later Naruto was getting tired so he decided to head back to the hotel wanting to get some rest before they left for Konoha the next day. Shizune too excused her and accompanied Naruto back while talking along the way. Halfway to the hotel Naruto noticed some movement around them and sighed. Apparently someone was going to try to get some revenge. Well. What do we have here guys? It's a boy and a bird. Naruto and Shizune turned and saw the gang from the bar standing there armed with knives and sticks. They didn't need much time to figure out what they were planning to do. I'll get you back for humiliating me in front of everybody, you blonde brat. The leader sneered at Naruto, making him smile a little. Are you that stupid that you can't see the headband I'm wearing? For those of you who don't know the meaning of this, it means that I'm a shinobi of Konoha. You guys don't stand a chance against us. Shinobi or not, you're just a kid and the women behind you can't be much stronger than you. Naruto wondered if the man wasn't a little touched in the head. Insulting a kunoichi like that was almost a sure way to get yourself killed. The man was extremely lucky that Anko or Kurenai weren't here, otherwise he would wake up in the hospital, if he would even wake up at all. He took out his sword and smirked as most of them took a step backwards. He stabbed the tip of the sword into the ground and traced a line between him and the gang before resheathing his sword. I'll warn you now, those of you who pass this line will regret it. I'll respond with force to those who pass it, so do the smart thing for once and leave us alone. Naruto and Shizune just turned to continue their way back to the hotel, and for a moment Naruto thought they would follow his advice, but it seemed the leader was thick-headed enough to ignore his warning. As soon as Naruto had his back turned, the man raced towards him with an iron bar held in both hands. Naruto turned back and faced the man head-on. Just when he was hit in the face with the bar, Naruto's hand shot out, catching it cleanly without any visible effort. The man struggled trying to wrestle the bar out of Naruto's hand, but no matter how much force he used, the thing didn't even budge. Next thing he knew was getting the air knocked out of his lungs and an immense pain in his stomach area. His eyes rolled back in his sockets and he slipped into unconsciousness before even hitting the ground. Anyone else who would like to try? Seeing their leader laying on the ground, the rest of the men quickly chose not to follow his example and shook their heads. They quickly turned around and vanished as fast as they possibly could into the streets, hoping that Naruto wouldn't come after them. Naruto, however, just turned around again and joined Shizune before saying goodbye when they reached her hotel. Not even a minute later he arrived at his own hotel and went straight for his room. The next morning Naruto woke feeling refreshed and ready to go, but he knew better than to expect that Jiraiya would already be ready. He hadn't even heard him return last night, so he could only wonder how late it had been. He looked around and saw clothes all over the room. Deciding he didn't want to be the one that had to clean up, he sneaked outside, enjoying the morning sun and tranquility. He went to the hotel where the two girls stayed and knocked on the door. A few seconds later a well-rested Shizune opened the door for him. Good morning, Shizune Nichan. Hello Naruto-kun, you're up early. Is Jiraiya same here as well? Aro Senin. No way, he's still sleeping off his hangover from last night. What are you doing here so early, Gaki? Tsunade asked quietly, trying not to worsen her headache. Good morning Tsunade Bachan. Goddammit Gaki, don't yell. My headache is bad enough as it is. Shizune was chuckling at the two of them. She knew Naruto just yelled at her to annoy her, and apparently he was very good at it too. Tsunade had never been a morning person to begin with, and after all the drinking she and Jiraiya had done last night, she wasn't surprised that Tsunade had a major headache. To save her teacher, she told Naruto that they would go and have breakfast in one of the many establishments in the village. This would give Tsunade the time to get dressed and ready before she got Jiraiya and joined them later on. Naruto, who was feeling hungry, immediately agreed, and together they left. It was about 2 hours later that Naruto and Shizune were joined by the two Sannin. They quickly ordered some breakfast and ate in silence. Their headaches gone, both of them were enjoying the satisfaction of having eaten. As the four had packed their stuff, they set out to return to Konoha, and Naruto was impatient to see his friends, but especially Anko. He missed her a lot during this trip, and on the way of the village he bought some local foods and candy for her. He knew she would enjoy that. Seeing that there was no need to travel slowly, they traveled in true shinobi style, meaning jumping across trees and high-speed movement. If all went well, they would reach Konoha in a few days, assuming they would rest along the way and stop traveling at night. So Tsunade, any special plans for Konoha? Seeing you're the new Hokage, you can change the things you don't approve of. Or at least some of them. I don't know really, it's been so long since I set foot in that village. Things must have changed quite a bit. Hey, maybe you can finally create the medical nin program you always dreamed about. Or you can outlaw Aro Senin's books. Naruto, don't even joke about that. Think about all those poor souls who enjoy the awesomeness of my stories. You know Gaki, that's not a bad idea actually. I'll remember that one. Tsunade, you wouldn't do that, would you? You would, wouldn't you? Naruto, I'm holding you responsible if that ever happens, you hear me? Naruto just ignored him and started talking to Shizune, who asked if there were any changes in the village she should know about. Jiraiya was pleading with Tsunade not to go through with the banishment of his novel, saying that it would lead to a revolt by the male population in the village. Tsunade, however, didn't listen, as she was thinking about the things that she could do once she was Hokage. She wouldn't say it, but the idea of starting that medical program sounded very good to her. During the previous war she had pleaded with the Sandaime to start training more medical ninja, but he refused, saying that it took way too much time to train them. At that time the village needed every man and woman to fight off the enemies, and none of them could be spared. When she left the village after Dan's death she had given up on that idea, but maybe now was the right time to implement it. They had traveled a great distance by nighttime, so they decided to camp outside. Naruto unsealed some of his stuff like a tent and offered it to Tsunade and Shizune, who accepted, thanking him for being such a gentleman. Jiraiya snorted at that but quickly shut up when he saw the glare both women were giving him. After hunting down some food and making a fire, they enjoyed a quiet meal, not really talking to each other. When they finished dinner, Tsunade asked Naruto what the technique he was trying to create was like. Oh no, I don't show anyone a technique that isn't finished yet. What? Why not? I just don't, there's no special reason for it. You'll have to wait until it's ready. Fine, I bet it was a stupid jutsu anyway. Now Tsunade, I've seen some of the jutsu Naruto made and they're quite impressive. Come on Naruto, show us one of your original jutsu. At first Naruto refused, saying he wasn't a performer in an act, but after Tsunade and Shizune joined in the pleading he quickly gave in just to shut them up. He thought for a while and wondered which of his jutsu he could show. He decided to show them the Kaden Nenchaku Bakuhatsu Hotaru no Jutsu, which was one of his favorites. He picked out a tree and started making the necessary hand seals. Tsunade and Shizune were staring at the tree, which was now filled with small fires resembling a well-lit Christmas tree. When nothing happened they turned to Naruto, who smirked. He put two fingers together and told them to hang on to their hats before snapping his fingers, detonating the fireflies, literally blowing the tree to smithereens. The three of them looked from the destroyed tree to Naruto and back before they started to congratulate him for making such a devastating and useful jutsu. Jiraiya even asked if he could learn it as well, to which Naruto answered, saying that he didn't have a problem with other people learning his jutsu as long as they worked for it instead of copying it like the Sharingan can do. Tsunade admitted that this wasn't anything like she expected from a young shinobi like Naruto, but she guessed it ran in the family. Like his dad before him, Naruto was bound to do some extraordinary stuff, she mused. Well, that was amazing, Naruto-kun. How do you come with an idea like that? I don't really know, Shizune-chan. I just think of something that might be useful and I try to find out if there's already a jutsu like that, and if there isn't then I start thinking how to create it. At the beginning I had a lot of trouble, but once I figured out the correct way to start, things just come naturally. For about half an hour Naruto amused himself with watching Jiraiya, who was trying to convince Tsunade to let him sleep in the tent, saying that his old bones wouldn't be able to handle sleeping outside on the ground. Of course Tsunade dealt with that issue fairly quick. All that was needed was the threat of banning Ika Paradise to make him shut up. He decided to let it be and went to sit in the corner to work on the next edition of the perverted novel. Tsunade was still thinking about what Jiraiya had said that afternoon, but at this time she didn't find anything that she would want to change, but she was sure that she would find plenty of things once she was settled back in the village. She watched Naruto staring at the fire with a small smile on his face. Hey Gaki, what's with the smile? Huh. Oh, it's just that this reminds me of the time I spent with Anko-chan in the forest. We always ate outside if the weather allowed it. Naruto, you said that being Hokage has been your dream for years, right? If someone told you that you could change anything you want about Konoha, what would you change? You sure don't ask easy question, do you, Tsunade-bachan? But I have some ideas, granted some of them are just not possible but other might be more realistic. Like what? For example, the academy. I realize that there are reasons for the way things are now, but if I could I would completely change the education system. Well, let us hear it, Naruto. Who knows, Tsunade here might use your idea. Jiraiya said. He had come over to listen when he heard what the discussion was about. Okay, For starters, I would drop most of the theoretical part and make that mandatory self-study with a test at the end of the week. That way the students would still learn the history of our village, but a lot of time would be free to focus on the practical part of training. Right now we spend so much time inside the classroom that we lose valuable time to practice things like chakra training, weapon training and all that. Naruto said, trying to explain some of the things he had thought about. For practical training I would change most of the current system. For example, when I started at the academy I never knew that there were different type of shinobi. But some of the kids, like me, had dreams like becoming a medical nin or something like that. But nobody ever explained that to us or told us what we needed to do. So what about setting up a system where students, who already know what kind of shinobi they want to be, can get extra help even if it's only some encouragement or small advice? Naruto paused for a few seconds trying to find a way to convey his ideas in a way that would sound realistic and not like some thought-up fantasies of a young shinobi like himself. Another thing I would change, and I will change it when I become the Hokage, is something that goes hand in hand with the missions the village gets. Every class the sensei told us that teamwork is the most important and strongest quality that Konoha shinobi have, yet not once do we practice it during the years in the academy. I would assign the students in the last year of the academy in teams of 3 and let them do the D-rank missions inside the village. That would not only give them the necessary teamwork training but also free up the newly graduated genin who can then focus on improving their skills. That's not a bad idea, Naruto-kun, but who would supervise them, and what about the students? There are bound to be kids who don't get along or who are just not made to work together. Letting them work together with the same team would later on cause trouble if they have to work with others in their genin team. I thought of that as well, and I would suggest the following. Change the teams every month, that way they'll learn to work with others, and at the end of the year the teacher will be able to see who works well with who, making the choice of the genin team easier. As for supervision of the academy teams doing the D-rank mission, there are enough retired shinobi on reserve to take care of that. All they have to do is be present after all. And their expertise can help the students as well by giving them advice. Yaki, I like those ideas, and if you don't mind I'll talk about it with sensei and then we'll work something out. You don't mind if I use your idea? Not at all, use it all you like. If you have any other ideas come see in my office, okay? Sure thing, Tsunade Bachan. I've got lots of ideas. Are you ever going to stop calling me that? Nope, not a chance. The next morning came quickly, and after a quick breakfast the 4 of them set out towards the village. Tsunade was thinking about what Naruto had said last night, and she had to admit that his idea had some merit. Changing the academy course wouldn't be easy and she would probably have to negotiate with the council, but that was something she could deal with. She already decided that the council needed to change as well. They had been in power for too long, and though she couldn't fault Sandaime for needing their help after the Kyuubi attack, she did however thought he should have dealt more strictly with them when or if they surpassed their boundaries. They had been traveling for some hours when Jiraiya came to a sudden halt, making the rest of them wonder what was going on. Jiraiya however didn't answer any questions but looked around and stared at the trees around them. Naruto, seeing that Jiraiya was getting agitated and restless, realized that the man had sensed an enemy and put his hand on the hilt of his sword ready to attack or defend at any time. You can come out now, I know you're there. A soft chuckling could be heard above them, and the 4 of them looked up only to see the remaining Sannin standing on a branch accompanied by a familiar young shinobi who Naruto recognized as Kabuto. The 2 jumped off the branch and landed in front of them. Naruto took a good look at both of them. It seemed Orochimaru had recovered a bit from his last attack, although Naruto was pretty sure his arms were still causing him discomfort. The fact that both his arms were bandaged seemed to reinforce his suspicion. Kabuto however looked in full health, and Naruto cursed. He knew there was something strange about him when he met him just before the first exam of the Chunin exam. In the confusion of the attack he totally forgot about him. Isn't this nostalgic? The 3 Sannin reunited for the first times in years. Shut up, Orochimaru. I stopped considering you as one of us the day you betrayed Konoha. You're a disgrace to the village and to the title of Sannin. Ah, Jiraiya, still as sentimental as always. You haven't changed a bit, still the same fool, only older. You may think I'm a fool, but at least I'm not a traitor who experimented on his own comrades and fellow shinobi. What I did was for the good of the village, but you and that fool of a Sandaime refused to see that. I could have made the village stronger than ever, but you and the rest of the village were too soft to do what was necessary. Stop kidding yourself, you didn't care about the village. The only thing you cared about was yourself and your foolish quest to become the ultimate shinobi. Kukuku. You know me too well, Jiraiya. Not surprising, after all we did grow up together. Enough with the small talk, Orochimaru. Why are you here? Tsunade demanded. Ah yes, Tsunade, I'm in need of your expertise. You see, my young friend here is a talented medic, but even he couldn't completely heal my injuries caused by Naruto-kun there. Ah, you're welcome, Snake Face. I just wish I could have taken more than just your arms though. Naruto-kun, you should be careful. I told you when I left that you would regret crossing me, and mark my words, I will get my revenge. And what makes you think that I would be willing or able to fix your arms? I can reunite you with the people you love most. I have a jutsu capable of bringing them back from the death. Surely you would like to see them again. Tsunade and the rest were furious at the way Orochimaru tried to exploit Tsunade's feeling for Dan and Naoki. Jiraiya was glad that Orochimaru didn't succeed in contacting her before he and Naruto had found her. He could only imagine how Tsunade would have reacted if he got to her first. Naruto was steaming mad at the snake Sanin. To use a person's feelings in a way was low even for him, and he would make him pay if only by screwing up his future plans even more. He knew he didn't have a chance against him right now, even with both arms injured. Orochimaru, you dare to insult my honor and integrity by proposing to betray Konoha and my precious people in such a way. Since when do you care about Konoha? You left the village because it cost you everyone you ever loved. Orochimaru would have continued talking, but he and Kabuto were forced to dodge a roundhouse kick from Tsunade. The tree behind snapped in half when Tsunade's foot impacted it instead of Orochimaru's face. Temper Tsunade. You always were a feisty thing. You didn't answer my question though. Why do I care about the village? It's simple really. It's because I'm the Godime Hokage of Konoha, that's why. And as the Hokage, it's my duty to dispose of you. Tsunade shot forward trying to punch him, but Orochimaru evaded the punch, making it slam into the ground, creating a large crater. She turned around trying to get ready to launch another attack when she saw Orochimaru lift his injured arm and ripped off some of the bandage covering it. Her eyebrow lifted when she saw the state of his arm. It was ghastly to say the least. It seemed as if the arm was dying slowly, and the color of the arm was a disgusting mixture of deep red and blue. Holding a kunai in the other hand, Orochimaru sliced at his arm and blood sprayed around. As soon as she saw the blood flowing from his arm, Tsunade froze in her tracks and started shaking like a leaf in the wind. Still haven't gotten rid of the silly fear of blood, Tsunade. Such a shame, for a medic nin to be afraid of a little blood. Does this mean you won't heal me? Orochimaru-sama, please allow me to deal with her. If you like Kabuto, but I'm afraid you're about to face another opponent, someone who seems to want to protect her. Then I shall deal with them as well. Shit, this is bad. Naruto, Shizune, you two protect Tsunade while I'll deal with Orochimaru. Be wary of that Kabuto guy, he's stronger than he looks. Understood. With that, both Naruto and Shizune took their position in front of a shaking Tsunade, ready to do whatever it took to protect the unofficial Godime Hokage. Kabuto smirked at them, obviously deciding that they weren't worth his time and effort. Orochimaru on the other hand turned to Jiraiya, who was ready to take action as well. This fight would be one of his toughest and most dangerous fights in his life, but he wouldn't let Tsunade get hurt if he could help it. Besides, he had some private business to handle with Orochimaru as well. Seconds passed quickly, but to the people involved they seemed like hours, slowly ticking away. Each of them were staring at each other, trying to find a lapse in concentration to exploit with an attack. So far none of them had moved an inch, but things would change soon. It was impossible for fighters of this caliber to remain in a status quo. Naruto was glaring at Kabuto, ready for anything the man could throw at him. With Shizune protecting Tsunade, he was confident she would be fine, if only she could get rid of her fear of blood. Jiraiya too was glaring at his opponent, his one-time friend, although he realized that the friendship he thought they had was purely one-sided. Orochimaru had never considered him a friend, let alone a best friend. Jiraiya wondered why he didn't see it before, but he guessed it had to do with being young. He still remembered the day he confronted Orochimaru after he fled from the village. He was unable to stop him at that time because he refused to give up on his teammate and fellow Sannin. Allowing him to get away was one of his biggest mistakes and he regretted it ever since. If he had stopped him there and then the present would have been very different. Shizune was worried about her mentor. She had known about the fear of blood for a long time. It had started after Tsunade was unable to save her boyfriend Dan on the battlefield during the war. Dan had been ambushed by the enemy and not even Tsunade herself was able to heal his wounds. Even she had limits and when Dan finally passed away Tsunade went into shock covered in her lover's blood. Ever since that day she froze at the mere sight of blood. Not soon after that the war ended in favor of Konoha and Tsunade left the village unable to stay in the place that had taken away almost every person she loved. Over the years Tsunade had tried to get rid of her fears but was fairly unsuccessful in her attempts. When they needed money the two of them would work as doctors but Shizune would deal with injuries where blood was present. Tsunade herself took care of anything else. It was a good arrangement and it gave them the necessary financial support they needed. Naruto-kun, it would be wise to step aside and let me deal with Tsunade. You should know by now that I don't abandon my friends Kabuto. There is no way I'm letting you get past me. Do you really think you can stop me? I'll admit that you're strong but I'm way above your level. If I had to compare then I would be around Kakashi's level. So, it wouldn't be the first time I defeat an opponent stronger than myself. Didn't your research tell you that? So be it then, don't come crying to me when you're about to die. Kabuto ran forward starting the fight and Naruto responded in the same way. While running towards his adversary Naruto quickly made some cage bunshin and together they launched an attack. Kabuto smirked seeing the bunshins and just destroyed them while still running forward. After disposing of the last bunshin he started an attack of his own. Kabuto was a medic nin who didn't rely on pure taijutsu like other shinobi. He used a version of the chakra scalpel trying to cut muscles and tendons. This allowed him to deal with opponent in a fast and efficient way. If he cut through the muscles in the legs they would be helpless and unable to move. If he cut the muscles in the arms it would be impossible to move them and make seals for jutsu. It was a very fast and effective way to deal with opponent but not everyone could fight this way seeing it demanded a near-perfect chakra control at all time. To most shinobi that was impossible to attain so this spoke highly of Kabuto and his skills. Naruto ducked under a punch before throwing an uppercut at Kabuto's jaw who leaned back slightly causing the punch to hit nothing but air. Kabuto retaliated by trying to cut the muscles in Naruto's lifted arm but missed due to a kick coming from his right side aimed for his knee. He back-flipped over the kick and took some distance trying to analyze Naruto's fighting style. Naruto was doing the same and came to the conclusion that Kabuto was not only fast but he had good combat instincts as well. Not bad Naruto-kun but if that's all you're capable of then I'm afraid you won't be able to defeat me. What is it with you bad guys? Each and everyone I fought seemed either so confident in their skills to a point of being arrogant or they're boasting about their strength from the very beginning. It's not boosting or arrogant when it is the truth. Yeah well, tell me that after I kicked your ass. Naruto rushed forward and tried to kick Kabuto but missed due to Kabuto leaning back letting Naruto's foot harmlessly pass over him. Naruto turned a full 360 degrees before trying to nail Kabuto with an uppercut to the jaw. Kabuto saw the punch coming but with the accelerated speed from the spin Naruto was a bit faster just gazing him on the tip of his chin. Kabuto's brain was knocked around in his skull affecting his balance and legs who refused to move for just a few seconds. Naruto who thought that Kabuto evaded saw his opponent freezing for a moment and didn't need to be told twice to take advantage of it. Faster than lighting he put his hand on the hilt of his sword and unsheathed it before slashing at Kabuto. The sword cut deeply into Kabuto's chest and a large wound appeared running horizontally from left to right. Kabuto who regained the use of his legs jumped backward not wanting to deal with another attack of Naruto's sword. Naruto let Kabuto retreat seeing he had landed an attack and looked at his opponent. The cut made into his chest was deep but not life-threatening, it would however cause him some pain and discomfort. When Kabuto started to laugh Naruto narrowed his eyes not knowing why he was laughing about. Very good Naruto-kun, I'm impressed that you succeeded in landing a hit on me. Unfortunately it won't help you into winning this fight. What's that supposed to mean? Kabuto didn't reply instead he removed his hand from the wound and to Naruto's surprise the cut made by his sword was completely gone. The only thing indicating he could have been hurt was the fact that his clothes had a large cut and were stained with blood. It doesn't matter what wound I suffer, as long as I have enough chakra left I can heal myself completely. Do you see now how futile our fight is? There is no way for you to win. So you have a healing ability as well, huh? Guess that put us on even ground in that aspect of the fight. Of course, I heard all about the Kyuubi and how you received a healing power as well. I wonder which one is more powerful, yours or mine. I don't care, so you'll excuse me if I'm not too enthusiastic about it. Naruto stared at Kabuto, daring him to attack again, but it seemed that Kabuto was waiting for him to attack first. For a second it seemed both of them were hesitant to attack, but all of the sudden both of them jumped forward and they met right in the middle. Naruto, who was still holding his sword, brought it down on Kabuto, who blocked it with a kunai of his own. Naruto tried to overpower Kabuto, but it seemed his opponent wouldn't budge even an inch. Kabuto too was trying to push Naruto back, and to his surprise he had a hard time. It seemed he had made some miscalculations about Naruto's strength after all. Seeing neither of two would let the other take the upper hand, they fell back a few feet before rushing back forward, filling the place with the sounds of metal meeting metal. They were moving so fast that Shizune was having trouble to follow the fight. She was after all trained as a medic nin, so she wasn't really good at combat. Her job was to support and heal the fallen shinobi during the battle. She was fast enough to evade most attacks because Tsunade had trained her. According to Tsunade, the most important skill of a medic nin next to the obvious medical expertise was being able to avoid getting hurt themselves. Shizune understood that part very well. If a medic nin got hurt or killed, they were unable to heal injuries. She truly hoped that Naruto could deal with Kabuto, but she could see that Kabuto was much more skilled than she first thought. If necessary, she would interfere and give Naruto a hand, but she was mostly afraid that if she left Tsunade's side that Kabuto would find a way to attack her. Tsunade, on the other hand, was on her knees shaking as a leaf. The sight of Orochimaru slicing his arm and the blood that sprayed out of the wound was replaying in her head time and time again. Ever since that fateful day she was deadly afraid of blood. Even the slightest sight of it was enough to make her freeze, and Orochimaru knew this all too well. Over the years she had tried to get rid of this fear, but she hadn't succeeded even with the help of Shizune. However, now she was a changed woman, a woman who had made a promise to become the Godime Hokage and protect her village in the stead of her little brother and the man she loved more than anyone. She would not let them down now, she told herself. Come on, Tsunade, get a grip. You promised to Naoki, to Dan and to Naruto that you would be strong. You can beat this fear, you're stronger than that. Tsunade was furiously thinking. She wouldn't give up this time. She would overcome her fear and fight alongside with Naruto and Jiraiya, and together they would show them that they can't mess with Konoha and its people. Naruto was getting tired of Kabuto's constant evading and blocking his attacks. The young man was obviously very skilled, and Naruto had already escaped some very dangerous attempts at his life. Kabuto was a pro with the chakra scalpel capable of cutting through muscles without any wound at the exterior. While Naruto could also use the chakra scalpel to some degree, it was nothing compared to this. If this continued, he would lose this fight, and that was unacceptable in his eyes. He wouldn't let Tsunade Bachan get hurt because he was too weak to defeat one opponent no matter how skilled he was. He decided that a change of tactics was in order, so before his sword met Kabuto's kunai he focused some chakra in the seal and used one of his original techniques. Bringing his sword down, a large amount of chakra was released in the Tengoku Seidenkaze no Jutsu, created by the force of the sword going down. Kabuto saw the attack coming and just jumped to the side, letting the attack pass him harmlessly. That won't work, Naruto-kun. I already saw that attack during your fight with Gaara. Naruto kept silent and just sheathed his sword before using Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to make several dozen clones. The clones surrounded Kabuto, who looked bored and not impressed or threatened in the least. Naruto disappeared in the crowd of clones and ordered them to attack. The clones attacked in small groups trying to catch Kabuto off guard, but this proved to be much harder than Naruto thought, although he should have known. Clone after clone attacked, some of them using taijutsu while others used some weapons or a small ninjutsu. After that, the first wave of clones were defeated. None of them had succeeded in landing a blow on Kabuto. Naruto-kun, I hope you have other jutsu or techniques at your disposal, because this is getting boring. The clones just smirked at Kabuto before a new group of them started attacking again. Kabuto ducked and blocked the clones' attack and disposed of them by using his chakra scalpel. One after the other the clones went up in smoke until only one of them remained. Kabuto, thinking this was the original, wasted no time and raced forward hoping to put an end to this fight. He hit Naruto right in the chest, causing him to cough up blood and falling down. Kabuto started laughing loudly before turning to Shizune and Tsunade in victory. Shizune was horrified to see Naruto get hit by Kabuto and started to blame herself for not helping her new friend. When she heard Kabuto laugh, she almost lost it and attacked him, but she knew that she needed to stay close to Tsunade to protect her. Kabuto was about ready to make his way over to the two women when he felt two pair of hands grab his arms. Surprised, he looked at his sides and saw two clones flanking him at both sides. He looked back at where the original Naruto should be lying, but to his shock that Naruto disappeared in a cloud of smoke as well. The clones grinned evilly and started spinning around while holding Kabuto firmly by his arms. After several high-speed rotations they released him, sending him sailing across the field while he tried to regain balance and stop the world from spinning in his head. Just when he was about to crash into the ground, he noticed a small rock change into a clone. When he passed over it, the clone kicked him right in the back, sending him upward in the sky. Kabuto felt his spine taking a bone-breaking kick and hoped his spine wasn't broken. The pain was enough to force him to close his eyes, which proved to be a big mistake. If he had his eyes open, he would see a clone jumping from a tree to just above him. Kabuto, still in pain from the first kick, almost lost consciousness when the clone clasped his hands together and delivered a devastating punch right on his chest bone, sending him back down to the ground. He slammed into the ground so hard that a large crater was formed. Kabuto couldn't believe he had been so careless to get caught. He had turned his back on an enemy that, although hurt, was still alive. Not only that, he had been fooled in thinking that this was the real Naruto by the fact that the clone had bled before falling to the ground. Kabuto tried to get up, but the pain in his back was still too big. Even with his healing ability, he would have to focus a lot of chakra to both his back and his chest if he wanted to get well enough to fight. Before he could even start to use his chakra, however, some new Naruto clones landed beside him. For a second Kabuto wondered what was going to happen next, but then the clones began glowing. He realized what was going to happen, and if wanted to survive he needed to get out of there right that instant. A giant explosion completely destroyed the surroundings and shrouded everything in thick smoke. The real Naruto emerged from the ground next to Shizune, hoping that his explosive clones had dealt with his opponent. The damage and destruction was enormous and the attack had cost him a lot of chakra, especially the cage Bunshin Kabuto had hit. To make it withstand a hit like that, he had been forced to push a significant amount of chakra into it, but the plan had worked perfectly. The exploding clones were charged with enough chakra to level a building, so even with his healing ability he would been hard-pressed to survive. When the smoke finally cleared, Naruto looked for a sign of Kabuto but didn't find any trace of him at all. Naruto frowned and immediately raised his guard and informed Shizune that the fight wasn't over just yet. While Naruto was looking for him, Kabuto was hiding a little further, trying to gather enough chakra to heal his wounds. While he had survived the blast by using Shunshin no Jutsu, at the very last moment he had been burned quite a lot and the pain in his back was killing him. Thanks to his training as a medic nin, he had been able to reduce the damage to a degree that he could move, but he couldn't heal it fully, otherwise he wouldn't have enough chakra left to fight. Slowly coming out of his hiding place, he addressed Naruto. "Well done, Naruto-kun. Orochimaru-sama told me not to underestimate you, but I tried to ignore his advice. I doubt I can beat you now, but I will get my revenge. If you think I will let you get away, you must be crazy. You betrayed Konoha and for that you will be executed after being questioned. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I can't allow that to happen." With his last strength, Kabuto once again used Shunshin no Jutsu to move himself to Tsunade, where he quickly kicked Shizune in the gut, knocking the wind out of her. He tried to stab Tsunade with his kunai, but before he could even get close to his victim he got hit in the jaw by a powerful punch. Kabuto was sent spiraling back to where he came from into the surrounding trees, crashing through several of them before coming to a stop, completely knocked out. Naruto and Shizune wondered what had happened, and after following Kabuto's trajectory back he saw Tsunade standing there in a punching position. "Naruto, Shizune, thanks for buying me some time to get over myself. Tsunade-sama, are you okay? What about the blood? I'm fine, Shizune. While you and Naruto were protecting me, I forced myself to get over my fears. I won't break the promise I made to my precious people. Alright, way to go, Tsunade Bachan. Watch it, you. Don't think for 1 minute I'll allow you to call me that every time. I'm your Hokage, so you better start calling me Hokage-sama. Whatever, Bachan. Yaki, if you don't want to spend the next few months doing D-rank missions, you'll show me some respect right here right now. You can't do that. That's abuse of power. Guess what, Gaki? That's one of the benefits of being Hokage. You excuse me, but shouldn't we go help Jiraiya-sama? Oh yeah, good thinking, Shizune. Gaki, this isn't over, but for now I'll let it slide. You're damn right this isn't over, but fine, let's go see how Ero Sennin is doing. Just then they saw Orochimaru and Jiraiya standing there, both wounded and bleeding. They had just arrived in time to see Kabuto getting hit by Tsunade, sending him flying into the trees. Jiraiya saw Naruto and Shizune take their positions in front of Tsunade, and he was satisfied that she would be protected. He had absolute faith in Shizune and even more in Naruto. There was no way Naruto would allow Tsunade to get hurt. He could see just how much Naruto liked her. He knew from the Sandaime that Naruto had always admired them, thanks to the stories Sandaime had told when Naruto was younger. He looked up to both of them, and when he had seen the state Tsunade was in, he couldn't help himself and he tried to help her just like the Sandaime had said he would. Tsunade too had gotten attached to the young son of the Yondaime. While at first she thought of him as an annoying little brat, he knew that she admired him as well. Not only for how he took on the burden of carrying the Kyuubi, but also his determination and his refusal to give up no matter what the odds. He wished he had remembered to tell Naruto of Tsunade's fear of blood. That had been a major error on his part, but there was nothing he could do about that right now. He turned his head back to his other ex-teammate, the one who had betrayed their friendship, their sensei and their village. The fact that he didn't succeed in convincing or returning Orochimaru was one of Jiraiya's biggest shame and regrets. He couldn't believe how Orochimaru had everyone fooled until that day, and that day he had let his friendship get in the way with his duty, but today would be very different. Orochimaru wouldn't leave this place alive if he could help it. It has been a while since we had our last spar, hasn't it, Jiraiya-kun? Stop with the act, Orochimaru. You don't fool anyone. It seems that something is bothering you. What could that possibly be? Perhaps you're afraid of losing your new apprentice. I know what you're trying to do, but it won't work. Naruto is stronger than you can possibly imagine. You should know this since he injured you. Yes, because of him my revenge against the old fool failed and I had to retreat. I still have to repay him for almost destroying my arms. Even Kabuto was unable to heal them completely. I will stop you and your ambitions today, Orochimaru. After today the legendary Sannin will be one short. You'll pay for the crimes and atrocities you have commit. You haven't changed, have you, Jiraiya? Still the naive and clueless fool you were back then. When will you understand that what I did would have made Konoha the strongest village to ever exist? My work could have changed the shinobi world forever, but like the old man you refused to see the truth. Stop deluding yourself, Orochimaru. You didn't care about the village back then. All you cared about is becoming the strongest shinobi and to learn every ninjutsu in the world. And I will succeed in that, and you won't stop me. I will become the ultimate shinobi and learn every single jutsu in the world. You still don't get what being a shinobi is truly about. A shinobi isn't strong because he knows every jutsu in the world. A shinobi is strong when he or she fights to protect something or someone they love. That is the true power of a shinobi, but that's not something you'd understand. Sensei taught us that all those years ago, and yet even after all this time you still refuse to listen. The old man and his pathetic speeches don't interest me. It is you who's the fool. But I guess this is a matter of opinions. That's one of the reasons I left the village as well. It sickened me to see Konoha being reduced to a society used to peace and tranquility. People became lazy and forgot what it was like to suffer. They forgot the horrors of war as soon as the peace was achieved. It was pathetic. Konoha should have crushed Iwa and destroyed it, but instead it became allies of some sort. Sensei was right in accepting Iwa's surrender. If he continued to fight, even more shinobi would have been lost on both sides. It would have meant the end of the village if he continued fighting, so that's why he accepted the peace offer so quickly. If the old fool had given me the title of Hokage, I would have made the village great, but instead he chose your blasted apprentice. I'll never forget the humiliation I had to suffer because of that. It was exactly because of your ambition that Sensei didn't choose you as his successor. He knew that you would lead the village into another war. He wanted peace for the village after fighting Iwa and Kumo for so long, that's why he chose Minato. Enough of this, I grow tired of your babbling. I'll deal with you right now. Orochimaru extended his neck and tried to bite Jiraiya in the throat, but Jiraiya easily evaded the attack by twisting his body. He tried to hit Orochimaru at the base of his skull, but the body of Orochimaru had followed the head and aimed a kick at Jiraiya's lower body. Quickly jumping to the side while grabbing the Orochimaru's leg, he started spinning before letting go, sending Orochimaru flying. Without wasting time, he started doing some hand seals and used Kaden Karyu Enden no Jutsu, sending a large fire dragon towards the snake Sanin. Orochimaru, who finally regained control of his body, saw the attack heading straight for him and quickly did some seals of his own. He slammed his hands into the ground and a huge slap of earth shot up, successfully blocking the fire dragon. Orochimaru, however, winced at the pain he felt in his arms. Even though Kabuto had been able to heal them to a certain extent, any use of chakra or brusque movement earned him a large amount of pain. Not for the first time he cursed Naruto for giving him such an injury. He vowed to destroy the boy if Kabuto hadn't killed him already. Jiraiya, seeing that his attack had been blocked, cursed as well. He hadn't expected that Orochimaru would be able to use his arms and jutsus. That Kabuto character had to been better than he thought. He briefly wondered if Naruto was alright, but shook his head knowing that he couldn't afford to get distracted or careless. The man he was fighting wouldn't hesitate to exploit his lack of concentration to end the fight. He forced some chakra into his legs and shot forward, closing the distance between him and Orochimaru. Before the latter could react, Jiraiya planted his elbow in his face, knocking his head backwards. The following kick to the chest area was avoided by using the Kawarimi no Jutsu with a nearby branch. Orochimaru wasn't the kind of man who would let his opponent hit him without retaliating, and he used one of his signature jutsu called Sene Jishu, and dozens of snakes shot out of his sleeves, wrapping them around the toad Senin. Trapped by the snakes, Jiraiya couldn't avoid being hit in the face, forcing him to step back a little. Orochimaru, seeing that Jiraiya was taking a few steps back, tried to close the distance so he could finish the fight up close and personally. Just when he was about to reach him, Jiraiya used one of his own original techniques called Ninpu Harijizo, which made his hair grow and strengthening it into sharp and strong spikes, ripping through the snakes. Orochimaru just managed to dodge the spikes by jumping to the side, narrowly avoiding being stabbed by Jiraiya's hair. The attack wasn't finished, however, and the long white hair followed the snake Sanin until it managed to grab him. Orochimaru cursed loudly when he felt the spikes catch him around the body and holding him in place, cutting him all over his body. Jiraiya tried to finish the fight by forming a Rasengan in his hand and aimed it straight at Orochimaru, who at the last moment opened his mouth and fired the famous and legendary Kusanagi swords at his incoming opponent. Jiraiya couldn't dodge the sword completely and it cut him deeply into the right arm just above the elbow. Instantly he could feel the venom that was on the blade starting to work, and he tried to shrug it off but without success. He wasn't really afraid since Tsunade was there to heal him back to full health later on. Still, the poison would slow him down and his right arm was almost useless now. Suddenly a huge explosion rocked the place and both Orochimaru and Jiraiya turned their head to see what had happened. They saw smoke coming from the direction where Naruto and Kabuto were fighting, and Orochimaru scolded, knowing that Kabuto didn't use explosive attacks or jutsus, so he figured it was the blonde who had created the explosion. Jiraiya too had come to this conclusion and smirked at Orochimaru. Seems like Naruto is dealing with your companion pretty well, don't you think? Orochimaru didn't bother to respond, but inwardly he was seething mad. He still had need for Kabuto, so it would mean trouble if he allowed Kabuto to get killed. He grinned and disappeared into the ground, intent on dealing with Tsunade and the blonde nuisance called Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya immediately made his way over to his companions as well, hoping he would make it in time. The look on Orochimaru's face told him that things would go very wrong if he let him have his way. Emerging out of the ground, Orochimaru never expected to see his young henchman getting hit by a fully cured Tsunade. Even he winced when he heard Kabuto's jaw shattering in pieces and then crashing into the trees. Orochimaru knew that even Kabuto with his amazing healing factor would have to spend several days resting after such a brutal attack. No matter how much of a healing ability you had, a punch from Tsunade was devastatingly painful and shattered bones instead of breaking them. Orochimaru felt Jiraiya arrive and knew that if he wanted to survive he would have to retreat. Even he was no match for two Sannin. Quickly he used Shunshin no Jutsu next to Kabuto's unconscious body and disappeared into the ground, leaving Naruto and the rest alone in the clearing. He swore to have his revenge on them as he was furious that he had to flee for the second time in not even 2 months. Shit, he got away. We should have stopped him while we had the chance. Let it be Naruto, we'll get another chance, don't worry. But Ero Sennin, if we got rid of him now we would have one less thing to worry about. Be that as it may, Naruto, it's too late now to chase him. Who knows where he is by now? Besides, we have more important things to do. Alright pervert, show me your wounds so I can heal them. Thanks Tsunade, the poison from the Kusanagi sword is troublesome to say the least. It's taking all my strength to stay standing right now. After healing Jiraiya and resting for a bit, they decided that they would spend the night there and make their way back to Konoha the next day. Naruto agreed grudgingly since he wanted to be back at Konoha as fast as possible. Jiraiya joked that he missed Anko too much, to which he replied that, of course he wanted to be with his super sexy girlfriend that he hadn't seen for almost a month. The smirk on Jiraiya's face disappeared after the word, super sexy, and a perverted grin settled on his face. Naturally that was enough for Tsunade to punch his lights out, making Naruto laugh loudly at Ero Sennin's foolishness. Little did they know that they were being observed from afar. So, should we attack? Don't be foolish, Kisame. Naruto is accompanied by 2 Sannin. Attacking him now would be pure suicide. There will be other chances soon, so for now we retreat as well. Fine, it's a shame they didn't dispose of that traitor Orochimaru. Orochimaru is no threat to us at this moment. We'll deal with him when the time comes. The larger one shrugged and followed his partner into the darkness of the forest. He knew that he couldn't go against his orders. He was strong, but even he would have trouble against the genius of the Uchiha clan. He shook his head thinking at how Itachi had slaughtered his entire clan except his little brother. Not even he was that cold, and he had done some terrible things in his life as well. Once again shrugging, he kept following his partner in silence, leaving for their headquarters to retire for the night as well. The next morning Naruto was awake much earlier than the rest, and after bothering Jiraiya enough to get up, both of them had a quick spar, though Jiraiya didn't hold back any punches this time, hoping that Naruto would learn not to wake him this early in the morning. After breakfast they departed again for Konoha using high-speed travel. Naruto insisted that they would run as long as possible since he wanted to reach Konoha that night or early the next morning. So Gaki, what are you going to do when we arrive at Konoha? First I'll go find Anko-chan and then I'll tell her everything that happened while having some ramen and dango. After that maybe I'll go find the rest of the gang and spend some time together. I wonder if they got stronger over the past month. Anko-chan, huh? From what I hear you seem to love her very much. Of course I love her. She means everything to me. She's the one who trained me after my graduation. Without her I would still be the dead last, and I would probably still be a loud and annoying immature kid. Remind me to thank her then. If you were even more annoying than you are now, then I shudder to imaging how you were before. Thanks a lot, Ba-chan. What did I tell you about calling me that? You not too. Then remember it, you damn Gaki. Laughter filled the forest as Naruto started evading Tsunade's punches while laughing loudly, making Jiraiya and Shizune laugh as well at their silly behavior. Both of them could see that Naruto and Tsunade had accepted each other as precious people, and both of them would do anything to make sure the other was safe and happy. Even if that meant to annoy each other once in a while. In the village everything had been going fairly well. Konoha shinobi were doing mission after mission, and the evidence of the attack was almost completely cleared up as well. Of course some minor problems had come up here and there, but nothing that couldn't be dealt with. Beginning genin and academy students were ordered to clean up the debris from the destroyed buildings, while older genin took care of the D-rank missions and even C-rank missions as well. Chunin and Junin were being deployed for higher-ranked missions. It wouldn't do for Konoha to show any weakness, since the other villages like Iwa or Kumo wouldn't hesitate to use the opportunity to promote their village and try to steal some of Konoha's clients. The village depended on the missions they received after all. When the shinobi weren't busy doing missions, they trained hard so that they would be ready if another attack would occur, even though they knew such a thing was unlikely. Nevertheless, it was better being safe than sorry. One team took this saying very seriously. Team 8 had been training as hard as possible. They practically lived on the training field, leaving only for missions and to return home to get some rest. Anko and Kurenai had been spending the day with Kiba and Shino, who wanted to work on their new techniques for a while. Alright, that's enough for today. Well done everyone. But Anko-sensei, we can still go on a little longer. No Kiba, your body needs time to rest as well. Training is good, but if you push your body too much you'll do more harm than good. Anko is right, Kiba-kun. You guys are doing great, there's no need to get hasty or impatient. But Naruto is getting stronger and stronger by the day. I need to train harder if I want to catch up to him. Kiba, listen to me. I understand that you want to get stronger and that's a good thing. But you and Naruto are different people. Naruto is Naruto and you are you. Don't focus on Naruto in your quest on becoming stronger. Become strong for yourself, not for someone else. Use the rivalry you have, yes, but don't let it rule your life. So, you're saying that I should quit trying to surpass Naruto. Do you think that I'll never become as strong as Naruto, is that it? No Kiba, that's not what I'm saying. There is no doubt in my mind that you'll be one of the strongest shinobi Konoha will ever have. And I know that Naruto thinks that as well. As a matter of fact, I believe that all of you can become the strongest, but sometimes we have to admit that there are people in the world that surpass the rest of us. Naruto is such a person, but that doesn't stop any of you to train hard and become just as strong. Anko-sensei is right, Kiba. Naruto is destined for things that are beyond us. We both knew that, didn't we? Does that change anything? No, it doesn't. We always said that we would become strong so we can protect those we love in the village and not for petty reasons like rivalry. I guess you're right, Shino, but still. I know that it's hard sometime to see others progress at a faster pace than yourself, but that's why we have each other. We're a team and we'll get strong together. The four of us will become strong. Kiba stared at his silent friend for a second before nodding his head. He had been training very hard over the past few months, but when he saw the difference between Naruto and himself he couldn't help but feel weak in comparison. While he wouldn't call it jealousy, he still felt something when he thought about those feelings. Maybe he had gotten off the right track a bit while focusing on Naruto and the difference between them. Like Anko-sensei said, they were two different people and there was no reason for him to feel weak and inadequate. He was strong and would only be getting stronger in time. You're right. I shouldn't be fixated on Naruto, but I should concentrate on getting stronger for myself and for my dreams. Thanks guys, I guess I needed to hear that. No problem, Kiba-kun, that's why we're here for. To guide and help you. Thank you, Kurenai-sensei. Well, Shino, are you up for finding our third teammate? Shino and Kiba bid their goodbyes to Anko and Kurenai and left to find Hinata, who was currently helping Sakura and Ino. Seeing their students leave for the day, Anko and Kurenai went home as well. They walked through the village greeting their friends and talking to each other. When they passed the main road that started at the front gate, Anko couldn't help but look at the horizon to see if Naruto wasn't approaching. She missed him very much. After a year of being together she was used to his presence and company, but most of all she missed how he held her in his arms while they slept. She hated waking up alone without him next to her. Don't worry, Anko, he'll be back soon enough. I know, but I just miss him. I hope everything went well. And then there's also Akatsuki to worry about. I'm sure Naruto-kun is safe, he's with Jiraiya-sama after all. Not many shinobi can stand against one of the Sannin. That pervert had better not corrupted Naruto, or else I'll introduce him to my newly sharpened kunai. Kurenai chuckled as Anko went on a tirade about how she would deal with the self-proclaimed super pervert. Sometimes she wondered how Anko came up with those punishments, but then she remembered that she was part of the interrogation squad and she had been working with Ibiki for a very long time as well. People who worked with the head of the interrogation section tended to get a little crazy. Kiba and Shino arrived at the training field where the three girls trained. Every day, after their team training, they would train together, helping each other, getting stronger and stronger. The results had been showing as both former fangirls had been complimented by their Junin sensei several times over the past few weeks. It had been an amazing feeling for Sakura and Ino to be acknowledged by their teacher and fellow shinobi, so both of them promised that they would do everything in their power to never disappoint them again. Hey girls, how's it going? Hey Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, thing are going great. Sakura has mastered the first of those medical jutsus and she's now starting on the second one. Ino has been working on her taijutsu and family jutsu and made some great progress as well. Ah Hinata, you're flattering us. We're still weak compared to you and the rest. That's not true, Ino-san. We all have our specialties and talents, so don't sell yourself short. Remember that believing in yourself is just as important as training. You're only weak when you give up and you vowed to never do that. Oh, I'm not giving up, Shino, but the truth is that we still have much work to do if we want to catch up to you guys. Well, enough training for today. Do you girls want to join me and Shino to get some food? Maybe we can round up the rest of group as well. Great idea, Kiba, let's go. The five of them went in search of the rest of the group, and after rounding everyone up they made their way to one of the many restaurants in Konoha. The group hadn't seen much of each other lately as all of them were getting some extra training from their Junin sensei. Shikamaru also had to deal with his Chunin duties as well, so he was extra busy compared to the rest. They had a great time together and promised to meet again soon, and all of them hoped that by then Naruto would be back as well. For the guards at the front gate of Konoha, time seemed to pass much slower than usual, to the morning couldn't come fast enough. Guarding the gate during night and early morning was a boring job since they almost never saw anyone or nothing happened that could give them some excitement. Guard duty during the day was an entirely different matter. They had to check the papers of people coming through, investigate and check cargo so nothing harmful could make it into the village. This at least made time go by fast. Man, I really hate the night shifts. There's nothing to do. Stop it already. You've been at it for hours already. I don't like it any more than you do, but it's our duty. Izumo and Katetsu were mid-level Chunin who had been friends ever since they started at the academy together. They had about the same dreams, the same hobbies, and even liked the same women, which could lead to trouble sometimes, and were the perfect team. They liked working together and had been doing so for years. During the invasion they had shown some remarkable skills, so they would likely be taking the Junin exams next year or so. This was something they both had dreaming about, so they worked hard to reach their goal. But for now they were Chunin and it was their job to guard the gate. What time is it? 5 minutes later than the last time you asked me. I'm bored. For the love of God, stop your whining. Quote. Thank you. Hey Katetsu. Yeah. I really am bored, you know. Arg. Katetsu was about to hit his longtime friend on the head for his constant nagging, but just then he noticed something moving at the horizon. Izumo, who had been teasing his friend to pass time and because he liked it, was ready to defend himself but stopped in his tracks as well when he saw his friend looking away from him. Turning his head he saw something as well, but because of the distance he wasn't sure what it was. Straining his eyes he thought he could make out 4 people, but he was unable to recognize them. Whoever they might be, they were traveling at high speed and would be there in a few seconds. Get ready, we haven't heard about any shinobi coming back from missions at this time. They nodded and prepared themselves for any possible problems. They had their hands on a kunai, ready to intercept the possible hostile travelers. When the 4 stopped right in front of them they were flabbergasted. There stood 2 of the 3 Sanin, the Yondaime's son and Tsunade's apprentice, waiting to get permission to enter the village. Yo, can we go in? Or do you need to see our papers? Oh, of course not, Jiraiya-sama. Please excuse us. Yeesh Aro Senin, no need to scare them like that. Don't worry guys, it's just us. We went to get Ba-chan here so she could be the Godime Hokage. Katetsu and Izumo almost lost it when Naruto called one of the Sanin a pervert, but when they heard him call Tsunade an old lady they were sure that things would get ugly. To their surprise Tsunade just bonked him on the head and yelled at him for calling her that. Soon Jiraiya joined in and yelled at Naruto that he needed to show him some respect while Shizune tried her best to calm everyone down. Seeing the argument taking place, both Izumo and Katetsu couldn't hold in their laughter anymore and just started laughing loudly. Well, it seems that things will get interesting again now that you're back, Naruto. Yeah, things have been way too calm around here. We need another of your pranks, Naruto. Naruto just gave a wicked smile making Tsunade groan loudly. She could really do without all the pranks Naruto could come up with. Naruto reassured her that he wouldn't pull any pranks anytime soon since he would be too busy training but that she shouldn't let her guard down. He could find some spare time if he really wanted. After talking for a few minutes they left Kotetsu and Izumo and entered the village. Naruto immediately left the others saying he wanted to surprise Anko as he was sure she was still sleeping at this early hour. Tsunade ordered him to come and see her later that day as she wanted to discuss several things with him. He just nodded and waved goodbye before using Shunshin no Jutsu, disappearing. Naruto made his way over to Anko's place after getting something for breakfast. He wanted to surprise his girlfriend with a nice breakfast in bed knowing she would be happy to have him back. He quietly opened the door and put his belongings in the hallway before sneaking into the living room. Passing the kitchen he took the necessary items like a cup, a knife and a plate before slowly continuing his way to the bedroom. Peeking inside he saw the woman he loved sleeping soundly with the covers wrapped around her and her arms were holding his pillow against her body. He looked at her for a moment and smiled. He wished he had a camera right now as she looked absolutely adorable. He made his way over to the bed and sat down next to her. Gently he grabbed a lock of hair and put it behind her ear. He bent down and gave her a little kiss on the cheek and smiled when she seemed to enjoy it. He started whispering in her ear so she would wake up. Naruto-kun, 5 more minutes. He chuckled when he heard her protest and continued his whispering. Anko was enjoying her sleep so she didn't want to wake up so early so when her Naruto-kun started to wake her up she was a little cranky. Just then she realized that Naruto had been away on a mission for some time now and that if he was here whispering in her ear that meant he was back. Faster than ever she opened her eyes and turned her head. When she looked into the soft blue eyes of her lover she jumped up and grabbed him in a fierce hug. Naruto-kun, you're back. I missed you so much. Anko exclaimed before she started to kiss him. For the next minutes no words were spoken and the world could have exploded there and then but neither Anko nor Naruto would have noticed as they were kissing and hugging like their lives depended on it. After they had confirmed how much they had missed each other Naruto just held her in his arms while Anko started talking about the things that had happened in the time he was gone. She enjoyed being in his arms again and wasn't about to leave the comfortable warmth she had missed so much. Naruto listened quietly enjoying the sound of her voice and the feeling of having her near him. When she was finished talking she asked him about his journey with Jiraiya and if he was successful in finding Tsunade-sama. Things went great, I learned some new techniques and Ba-chan agreed to become the Godime Hokage. Ba-chan. Yeah, you know Tsunade Ba-chan. I call her that because she's old and I know it irritates her. He said while grinning. Only you would call one of the legendary Sannin, Ba-chan, Naruto-kun. If you say so, but you know. She's a great person even though she's a little moody sometimes. Anko laughed at Naruto's face when he said that. She was sure that the two of them had already bonded on a certain level. Naruto had the ability to influence people like that and once they saw the real Naruto they would have trouble not liking him. They stayed in bed for another hour talking and enjoying each other's presence before they got up so they could get ready for the day. Anko had been helping out with Team 8's training and she had to be at the training grounds in half an hour. Of course Naruto would join her as he wanted to see his friends as well. When he heard just how much they had trained he was anxious to see the results. They walked through the village chatting away and before they knew they had arrived at the training grounds. It seemed that they still had some time left as they were the first there. Naruto sat down against a tree and Anko installed her between his leg leaning against his chest. Kurenai was hurrying to the training grounds. She had woken up a bit later than usual so she had to hurry to make it on time. She did find it strange that Anko hadn't passed by to come and get her like she usually did but thought nothing of it. Maybe she had a mission or something like that. When she finally reached the grounds she smiled brightly at the sight before her. Now she knew why Anko hadn't stopped by her house. Seeing the two of them sitting there, looking content and happy she felt somewhat jealous of Anko. Oh, she wasn't interested in Naruto but rather she wished that her own love life would be like that. All she had was flirting with Asuma but neither of them made any move to go beyond that. Maybe it was time to be more aggressive like Anko said. If Asuma didn't have the balls to make the first move then she will do it for him. Approaching them she greeted Naruto with a, "Welcome back," and a, We missed you, before she started to ask how things went. She wasn't really surprised to hear that he had succeeded in his mission as he had a knack for doing what others deemed impossible. A little bark interrupted her next question and she turned around only to see the rest of her team arrive as well. Naruto, when did you get back? Just this morning, Kiba. How have things been while I was away? Things went great. We did several C-ranked missions and we all got a lot stronger. I can't let you get too much ahead of me, you know. You all look a lot stronger, that's for sure. Then again, I got stronger as well. Hello Naruto-kun, welcome back. We missed you, the team wasn't the same without you. Thanks Hinata-chan, I'm glad to be back too. Traveling with a Sannin isn't that much fun. Sure the training is great but living with a pervert like Ero Sennin day after day isn't that great. Don't even get me started on Tsunade Bachan. You call one of the legendary Sannin Ero Sennin and the other Tsunade Bachan. Man, you have some big ones. Kiba said jokingly. Big ones. Never mind that Naruto, what kind of training did you do? Kurenai said while glaring at Kiba for his use of words. Naruto told them how he sparred every day with a Kage Bunshin of Jiraiya and how he got his ass handed to him every single time. He also told about the new technique he was creating although he refused to give any details. He didn't tell about the things he and Tsunade discussed but did tell them the general story so they would know what happened. He was about to tell them about the encounter with Orochimaru and Kabuto when a Chunin appeared. Namikaze Naruto, the Hokage requires your presence and that of your team. And with that he disappeared again. Ah man, what is it now? Well, guess there's no helping it. Let's go. When the Hokage Tower came into view Team 8 saw that they weren't the only ones to be summoned as Team 10, Team 7, at the moment only Sakura, and Team Guy were arriving as well. The secretary told them to go right in and Naruto opened the door. He had missed the old man as well and couldn't wait to tell him about the mission. Stepping right into the office he wasted no time and greeted the man he considered his grandfather. Ji-chan, what's up? Making everyone smile at the familiarity between the two. Welcome back Naruto and if you sit down we'll get right to business. The elderly Hokage said while putting his pipe on his desk. Everybody just sat down and waited for the Hokage to start. We'll start in a moment as we aren't fully complete yet. A few seconds later and the door the office opened again making all those present turn their heads. They all sighed when they saw it was only Jiraiya and when he noticed the reactions he let out a tirade about showing a little more respect. It was the next person who earned the most stares and jaws falling to the ground. Tsunade had walked in right after Jiraiya and when she noticed the stares, especially from the males, she felt a little uncomfortable. Fortunately she could count on Naruto to lighten the atmosphere. Ba-chan, Shizune Ni-chan, how did you like the village? Naruto asked them. Absolute silence. Then several things happened all at once. Jiraiya started wailing that Tsunade was shown more respect than him, Shizune greeted everyone, Kakashi looked back down and continued reading in his book, Tenten was about to let out a freakish fangirl scream at seeing her idol and the rest was staring at Naruto for his blatant disrespect for Tsunade while said one shot forward intent on bonking Naruto on the head once more. Naruto grinned when he saw Tsunade's right fist coming straight at him and at the last moment he ducked right under it causing her to hit nothing but air. Ha! You miss ARGH, while she had missed with her right nothing stopped her from using a follow-up punch with her left, right. So when she saw Naruto duck and grin she just used her left arm to punch him straight in the gut. Naruto fell down like a sack of potatoes and started coughing. When he regained breath he stood up and started glaring at Tsunade. What the hell is wrong with you Ba-chan? You could have killed me with that punch. Yeah I know, too bad it didn't work. Anyway that'll teach you to think you can outsmart a Sannin at your level. You're nothing but a brat. I may be a brat now but I promise you that one day I'll make you eat those words Ba-chan. Both of them were glaring at each other unaware that the others in the room were staring in disbelief at the two of them. Here was one of the legendary Sannin arguing with a rookie Chunin like they had known each other their whole lives. The Sandame was sporting a million-watt smile when he saw his former student act like that. He knew he had made the right decision when he sent Naruto to get her. Just like so many people before her Naruto had succeeded in breaking through the wall she had built around her heart after the death of Dan and Nawaki. Seeing her acting freely and happy with Naruto warmed his heart like the sun on a hot summer day. You Naruto-kun, how about you introduce everybody? Sandaime said, trying to get back some order in his office, though he did enjoy the chaos at the moment. It was such a difference with the usual atmosphere. Good idea, Ji-chan. Alright everyone, this is Shizune Ni-chan. She is a great medic nin and is the apprentice of Tsunade Bachan here. Tsunade glared at him for calling her old again. Who's one of the legendary Sannin together with Arrow Sennin and Snake Face? Naruto then introduced the other to them and let them tell something about themselves as well. Finally he came to the last person, Anko. This is Anko-chan, she's my sensei, my best friend and my future wife. Naruto said, looking at her with loving eyes. Tsunade looked at Anko and stepped forward before she grasped Anko's hands and gave them a big squeeze. So, you're the Anko I heard so much about? She asked, earning a nod in reply. Tsunade then surprised her when she gave her a big hug that lasted a few seconds. Thank you. Naruto told me that if it wasn't for your training and help he would still be the loud and attention-seeking brat he used to be. Seeing how annoying he is now, I can only imagine what that must have been like. Anko could only give a small, it was nothing, in reply, too shocked to say anything else. The others in the room just laughed loudly at Tsunade's comment. What the hell, Ba-chan? What is that supposed to mean? Naruto yelled loudly. Call me old one more time, Gaki, and I swear you and your team will be doing D-rank mission for the rest of the year. This made Kiba, Shino and Hinata look at each other before they nodded and jumped Naruto, trying to stop him from calling her old again. They grabbed him and told him that there would be hell to pay if they were forced to do D-rank missions again because of him. Naruto didn't want his teammates to be mad at him, so he refrained from answering, calming teammate down. Alright everyone, let's get back on track here. First of all, Naruto, congratulations on completing your first S-rank mission. I heard about how Orochimaru and Kabuto showed up, well done. Sandaime said, praising Naruto for a job well done. The rest of the genin and senseis were congratulating Naruto as well except one person. She grabbed Naruto by the collar and glared at him. Naruto, you didn't say anything about fighting Orochimaru. When were you going to tell me? Anko said in a voice that made everyone back up a little. Naruto gulped and tried to calm her down. Anko-chan, I was going to tell you, I swear, but then the Chunin arrived telling us that we needed to come here. Besides, I didn't fight Orochimaru this time, Arrow Sennin did. You better not be lying to me, Naruto-kun. She said softly, more afraid of what could happen if he fought Orochimaru again. Relax, Anko, he's telling the truth. I fought Orochimaru while he and Shizune took care of that Kabuto guy. Jiraiya said, trying to calm her down. Anko nodded before she grabbed Naruto in a fierce hug, whispering that she was sorry for overreacting. Naruto happily returned the hug before he sat back down, knowing that the Sandaime wanted to get this meeting back on track. Now that everyone has calmed down again, let me explain why you are here. Sandaime said, looking at them from behind his desk. Everyone knew that the time of playing around was over. This was the leader of the village sitting there and not the friendly old man of a few minutes ago. As you all have noticed, your Junin senseis have been giving you a much harder training schedule than before. This was done on my orders. I have decided that the 12 of you will be a special unit trained to deal with a huge threat to our village and maybe even the whole shinobi world. What I'm about to tell you is a S-ranked secret that will result in your death if you tell anyone about it. Is that absolutely clear? The tone of his voice told them all that there would be no exception to this rule, and they all nodded their understanding. Very good. Now let me tell you about the reason for this special unit. Just after the invasion, Jiraiya told me about an organization called Akatsuki. This organization consists out of 9 S-ranked shinobi, one of which is none other than Uchiha Itachi. I'm sure you all realize the danger such an organization represents. We don't know their precise goal or purpose, but what we do know is that they are strong and dangerous. Yes, Sakura, do you have a question? I'm sorry to interrupt, Hokage-sama, but I wanted to know how Sasuke is doing. Tsunade assured me that Sasuke would be fine when she had a look at him this morning. He should wake up in a few hours, but I want to warn you all. Sasuke has suffered a huge mental trauma and will likely need some time to recuperate. What happened to Sasuke? Naruto asked. Ah yes, you don't know about that incident yet. A few weeks after you left, Uchiha Itachi showed up in the village for an unknown reason. When Sasuke found out that his brother was here, he immediately attacked him. Like you can imagine, Sasuke lost and suffered a mental attack from his brother, putting him in a coma until Tsunade healed him this morning. Sandaime explained. While I understand that he wants to defeat his brother, attacking him like that is pure idiocy. There's no way he could defeat AS-ranked Nukenin at his level. I hope he's learned his lesson and that maybe he will change his attitude a bit. Naruto sighed. Naruto, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you were worried about Sasuke. I don't understand why you would care about him. Sasuke isn't a good friend of us. As a matter of fact, he considers us below him and doesn't hesitate to insult us whenever he can. Choji said. While he didn't hate Sasuke, he didn't like him either. That may be true, Choji, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. Unlike you all, Sasuke and I grew up having no parents or family, nobody to say good morning to or asking how your day was when you got home from school. When you come home day after day with nobody waiting for you, things get very lonely very fast. It's something that you can't really understand if you haven't been in that situation yourself. It hurts and it consumes you if you're not careful. If I didn't have Ji-chan when I was younger, I don't know if I would still be alive right now. Naruto said solemnly. Naruto is right. Sasuke has many faults, but some of them are caused by the fact that he suffered a trauma the night his whole clan was slaughtered by his brother. I'm not excusing his behavior towards others, but an event like that leaves a mark on a young child. Sandaime finished. The rest of the genin nodded, understanding that this was a subject that would have to be discussed another time. We keep getting off track, so no more question until I'm finished. To deal with Akatsuki we need shinobi specially trained, as there are not many who can go against those kind of enemies and get out alive. So I'm assigning you all a S-rank mission that will last until Akatsuki is defeated. This means that the number of normal missions that you do will go down a bit and that you'll focus on training and getting stronger. It took another hour before the meeting was over, and basically it had been decided that the group would focus on training either in group or individual, just like they had been doing all along. After that, everyone was dismissed except Naruto and Anko. Naruto and the rest agreed to meet up later and get some dinner, or if they were still allowed, maybe they would visit Sasuke, who would have to spend a few days for observation in the hospital. When the group had left, Sandaime took his pipe and puffed a few times, enjoying the feel of the tobacco in his lungs. He knew it was bad for his health, but he was an old man, so he was allowed some pleasure, he mused. So, according to Tsunade here, you have some interesting ideas for Konoha. She didn't want to tell me anymore without you around, so please Naruto, would you explain them to me? Sandaime asked, interested. He was always open to new ideas, and besides he wouldn't be Hokage much longer now that Tsunade was here. Before I explain them, I have a question as well. When will Ba-chan take over? Naruto asked, pointing at Tsunade. We talked about it this morning and decided that I will resign at the end of the month. In other words, in about 8 days, we'll announce it to the council tomorrow and to the village the day after tomorrow. Sandaime said while leaning back in his chair. Do you expect any problems? Naruto asked, curious. I foresee no problems with the council, as Tsunade is a highly respected kunoichi and she has proven her worth several times over during the war. Same for the village, a lot of people owe their life or the life of a loved one to Tsunade, be it directly or indirectly. Sandaime said after thinking a second. Why do you want to know? Just curious, I guess. Naruto shrugged. Alright, about my ideas, like I said to Tsunade, Ba-chan and Ero Sennin before, I came up with them some time ago, so some of them might be impossible or just plain stupid, so let me know. Naruto started to explain his ideas for the academy and the future students and genin as well. Sandaime listened carefully and had to admit that some of the things Naruto said made sense. Teaching the young academy students teamwork while being at the academy would allow the Junin sensei to focus on training later on. The idea of making them work together on the D-rank missions had merit too, since those were made especially to encourage teamwork. So you're saying that if we make them work together as academy students, we would be able to see who works well with who, making it easier to form the teams later on? Sandaime asked, even though he had understood the concept straight away. He did wanted to hear how Naruto would sell his idea to him. After all, this was something he would have bring in front of the council as well. He may be the Hokage, but even he didn't have the power to just change everything if he felt like it. Exactly. Let me give you an example. In the current system, the last of the class and the rookie of the year are usually put together to balance out the team's right. Earning a nod from the Sandame, he continued. Imagine for a second that I had been put on Team 7 with Sasuke. What would have happened in your opinion? Well, the teamwork would have been awful, that's for sure. Sasuke seems to have a dislike of you as you were classified as a weakling. He would have thought you would slow him down and he probably would have ignored or taunted you. And you wouldn't be able to endure his taunting and would have risen to his provocations all the time, making it even harder to work together. Perhaps in time the two of you would learn to work together, but it would take a lot more time. Sandame said after being silent for a minute. That's what I thought as well. We would be so focused on our differences that teamwork would be next to impossible except on life-threatening moments. Not only would we suffer from this but also our third teammate as well. Take a look at Team 8. Their teamwork is some of the best I've seen. They train together and help each other get stronger and better. That's because they're not only teammates but also friends who want to help the other reach their dreams. Naruto finished his explanations. Okay, I'm with you so far, Naruto. What you propose is possible, but it would take some time to see the results of this new system, and that's the problem. What if we change everything and then it turns out it doesn't work? We would have lost a lot of time and resources. Sandame said. He liked the idea, but he had to be realistic as well. The council was bound to bring up that argument as well. Naruto nodded, knowing that time and money always were a major pain in the behind. Surprisingly, it was Tsunade who came up with the solution. But what if we introduce the system over several years? What if we let the last year of the academy form teams and let them do a set number of D-rank missions a week? For example, 3 missions a week for each team. That way we can monitor the change from close by and we don't have to change everything all at once. She said, explaining her solution. That's not a bad idea, Tsunade. That might be possible. Yes, I believe that's the best course of action. We'll explain it to the council after you've been appointed as Hokage. Sandame said, happy that they had found some sort of solution to the problem. What else did you have in mind, Naruto? Okay. My next idea is about the council itself. The problem is that I don't really know how the council works and what its limitations are. Naruto said. Well, the council is made up out of 2 parts. One is the Shinobi Council, whose job is to help the Hokage run the shinobi part of the village. This means that they have a say in what happens and that they have a certain rights and that those in the council have several privileges as well. Before, the council had less power than now, but when I came out of retirement after the Kyuubi attack, I had so much work that I allowed to council more power and say in the village. Unfortunately, when things calmed down again, they were unwilling to return to their previous level of power and I was unable to force them. The Shinobi Council exits out of the major clan heads and my advisors, and while it pains me greatly to say this, some of them are more focused on their own power instead on the good of the village. Sandame said while smoking his pipe. What about the other part of the council? Naruto asked, interested. This was a unique chance to learn about how the village worked, so he listened closely. Anko too was listening. After all, she would be the wife of the Hokage one day, so best if she knew how things worked as well. The other part is the village council, and they are sometimes a bigger pain in the butt than the Shinobi Council. The village council is responsible for all things that are not related to shinobi matters. For example, they take care of complaints or problems with housing, shops and stuff like that. Again, they seem to think that they have a right to stick their noses into things that don't relate to them and try to get more power so they can influence things in the village. The biggest problem is that the Hokage has to deal with every problem, no matter how small or insignificant. This takes a lot of paperwork, so I lose precious time that I could be using otherwise. Sandame said, smiling a bit at Tsunade's face, which showed that she regretted coming back to the village to become the Hokage. Yaki, your idea better work because there's no way I'm dealing with all this. Tsunade said, glaring at Naruto. That depends on what the answer will be to my next question. Naruto said calmly. Ji-chan, when Ba-chan here becomes Hokage, can she change things or is everything set in stone? About the council, I mean. Well, she can't disband the council if that's what you're asking, but she can make some changes, yes. Of course, that will depend on how big and what kind of changes. He answered. Could she appoint a head of each council, someone who's in charge and who only answers to the Hokage? Naruto asked. I think that might be possible if you can get the council's agreement, which would be very difficult I'm afraid. Sandaime answered after thinking for several minutes. It would have to be someone they all trust and who's strong enough not to get influenced by them. So if Tsunade Ba-chan asked you to be head of the shinobi part and the council agreed, would you accept? Naruto asked innocently. Tsunade grinned. If Sarutobi-sensei was there to help her, then she could deal with those councils. Sarutobi was a respected shinobi and had great knowledge about anything shinobi related after years of being Hokage. He wouldn't be swayed or influenced by pushy members of either council, and she knew that he would always have the good of the village in mind. If he accepted, that would mean one less thing to worry about. Sarutobi, however, was a bit lost. On one hand, he looked forward to his retirement after years of politics and the paperwork that came with it, but on the other, he did want to help out Tsunade and help her run the village. He looked at the innocent look on Naruto and frowned. The little jerk had managed to push him into a corner with his ideas. He sighed as he made the decision, even when it was obvious that he didn't need to think about it. Naruto, you should go into politics with that poker face of yours. You pushed me into a corner knowing what my answer would be without me realizing it. Sandaime said, glaring at his adoptive grandson. Just when I thought I was free of all that, you come up with something like this. Who, me? Nonsense, Ji-chan, it was just a question. I don't want you to feel obligated to accept this position. Naruto said, smirking at him, and winked at Tsunade, who grinned back. Yeah, right. Sandaime snorted. But fine, yes, I believe I would accept such a position. I was going to offer my expertise and knowledge to Tsunade anyway. Naruto then explained how he wanted Hideki as the head of the civilian part of the council, knowing that the man was well liked and respected by the villagers. Sandaime agreed that Hideki would do an excellent job if they could convince him to accept the position. Naruto said that it would be their job to convince them, as he was an old friend of Sandaime. They decided that these ideas were enough for the time being, as this would take a lot of time and effort to make this happen. Any other ideas were put on hold, and Naruto and Anko were dismissed from the Hokage's office. When Sandaime looked out the window, he saw them laughing and joking, and a smile grew on his face. He's an amazing person, isn't he, Sarutobi-sensei? Tsunade asked, seeing the smile on his face. Indeed. I remember Minato saying that his child was destined for great things, and not once have I doubted his words. Sandaime said, looking at the portrait of the Yondaime. Well, yes, I'm off to the hospital as well. There's this Lee kid who need to be looked at. Tsunade said, sighing. Ah yes, Lee-kun, he got severely hurt when he fought during the preliminaries of the Chunin exam. If there is anyone who can heal him, it's you, Tsunade. Sandaime said, recalling the vicious fight between Lee and Gaara. Anko and Naruto joined the rest of the gang at the usual place to have dinner and talk about their past few weeks. Naruto was especially interested in hearing the fight between Sasuke and his brother, but was a bit disappointed when he heard the details from Kakashi-sensei. He had hoped to find out more about Itachi, seeing as he was a target of him and the organization called Akatsuki. Kakashi did tell him a bit about Itachi from when they worked together in Anbu, but even then he didn't found out much. Suddenly Guy dropped in with Lee, both smiling like Christmas would come twice in a year, and when they asked what was going on, Guy told him that Tsunade had examined Lee and that she was fairly confident that she could cure him. Naruto and the rest were very glad for their friend, knowing that being a shinobi meant everything to him, and told him that they would support him all the way. Of course, this made Lee and Guy yell out about the youthfulness of their friends, earning glares from the other customers in the restaurant. Kurenai-sensei, what do you have planned for the new training schedule? Hinata asked. She had been working very hard on her taijutsu and her medical skills ever since the invasion, but she still needed to get stronger and still had so much to learn. Well, the 5 of us have decided that we'll do group training from time to time as well as individual training. For example, I'll take care of genjutsu training while Kakashi will do jutsu training, Guy will take care of taijutsu. That leaves Anko and Asuma, who will be available for individual training or questions you might have. Kurenai said, smiling at how every genin listened closely. Ah, Hinata-chan, that reminds me. You're learning medical jutsu, right? Naruto asked, to which Hinata simply nodded. Well, while we were heading to Konoha, Tsunade Ba-chan told me that she wanted to start a program to train medic nin. I don't know any of the details, but if you're interested you should ask her about it. Hinata immediately looked at Sakura and Ino, who nodded as well, saying that they would go first thing in the morning. The three of them were very interested in becoming medic nin, though Ino just wanted to learn enough to be able to help her team. Sakura and Hinata however wanted to become full-pledged medic nin if that was possible, so being taught by Tsunade herself was a dream for them. Naruto grinned when he saw the determination on their faces, knowing that Tsunade would have her hands full with the three of them. He was glad the girls had found a way to realize their goals, and in the end it would help them all out if they had several people who could heal them if they got injured. It seemed the future would be filled with training and battles, but he knew that he had his friends at his side, so he was sure that things would be alright as long as they fought together. While Naruto and the rest of the Genin and Junin sensei were enjoying a lovely meal, two Sannin and a Hokage were in fierce discussion about a blonde shinobi who had influenced their lives so much. As Akatsuki would be coming for Naruto, they all agreed that his training would have to be on a whole different level. It wouldn't be enough for Naruto to just follow regular training, he needed specialized training and sparring against stronger opponents. This is why they were arguing about what to do for the young Chunin. I want to take him on a journey with me. That way he'll be off the radar and the village wouldn't have to deal with an attack so soon after the invasion, if they decide to come after him. Jiraiya argued with both Tsunade and the Sandaime. I understand what you mean, Jiraiya, but I don't think Naruto will agree with that plan. He was already hesitating to leave the village in search of Tsunade here. He would feel responsible for leaving the village in time of need. And frankly, the village could use any available shinobi at the moment. Sandaime answered. How long would you take him away, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked. She could see that both men had a point. One-on-one training with Jiraiya would help Naruto getting stronger, but she wasn't sure Naruto would agree with leaving the village as well. 3 years is all I need. In 3 years I'll make him strong enough to deal with Akatsuki. Jiraiya said with confidence. You're saying that in 3 years' time Naruto would be strong enough to deal with S-rank Nukenin? Isn't that a bit optimistic? Sandaime said, curious. He knew that Naruto was strong, but 3 years wasn't that long. Not at all. Naruto is the type who learns while doing things. On this journey I'll introduce him to my techniques and to my spy network. There's no doubt in my mind that he can do it. Jiraiya said, unsealing some sake much to Tsunade's pleasure. Wait a minute, you're intending to make Naruto your heir? Are you serious? Sandaime asked, perplexed, shocking Tsunade as well. Absolutely, there is no one better than Naruto. He's the one who will inherit my legacy as well as his dad's. Jiraiya said, filling Tsunade's and Sandaime's sake saucer. Still, 3 years is a long time to be away from the village. Tsunade said. Very well, Jiraiya, if you're sure about this, I guess the choice is up to Naruto. But let me make one thing absolutely clear. You'll be the one who'll explain all of this to Anko, because I can assure you that she won't like it. Sandaime said, smirking at the way Jiraiya's face changed from happy to absolutely terrified. He could only imagine how she would react to this plan. You can't be serious. She'll kill me for sure. Jiraiya said nervously. Good luck, Jiraiya, you'll need it. Tsunade said while laughing at Jiraiya's misfortune. When do you want to leave on this trip? Sandaime asked. Well, I want to ensure everything goes smoothly, so I'll go and check up on my contacts. So let's say I'll be back in 6 months, we'll leave after that. Jiraiya said after thinking for a while. The rest of the evening was spent with telling stories and remembering the old days while enjoying some fine sake. It had been years since teacher and students had been reunited, and each of them had a lot to tell. They said their goodbyes around midnight, knowing that starting tomorrow things would change in Konoha and that they would need to be rested and ready. Of course, Tsunade had to punch Jiraiya in the face after he made a lewd remark about them spending the night together, but other than that things went great. Naruto woke up feeling very refreshed and well rested. He and Anko had returned straight home after spending the evening with their friends, wanting to spend some time together. They hadn't seen each other in weeks and both of them had missed the other greatly. Now that he was back, Naruto would be sure to spend as much time as possible with his girlfriend. Today, however, he would be very busy with team training in the morning, and after that he would have to start his Chunin duties as well. Shikamaru had told him that he had been doing troublesome things ever since he became a Chunin as well. Naruto wasn't looking forward to some of those tasks. Standing guard at the gate didn't look much fun, or filling in papers for some unimportant happening wasn't his cup of tea either. He hoped to convince the Sandaime that he needed time to prepare and train so doing Chunin stuff would stop him from advancing fast. Sighing, he looked at Anko's sleeping face and snuggled back into her embrace, eager to get some more minutes of her feeling against his body. Anko was very comfortable lying in her bed with what she knew was her boyfriend in her arms. She loved the feeling of having him snuggle up to her in the morning. This was one of the things she missed the most when he was gone. She hated waking up alone in the morning, so when Naruto got back she was very relieved he was back where he belonged. She opened her eyes only to see Naruto staring at her with a smile on his face. Good morning Anko-chan, I missed having you next to me the past few weeks. Naruto said softly, knowing Anko preferred waking up in silence. Anko nodded before she kissed him soundly on the lips, greeting him as well. She pulled him closer and continued kissing him and would have until late in the morning, but she knew that they had team training this morning so they had to get up. Groaning, she separated from him and sat up, pouted slightly, earning a chuckle from Naruto. He knew what she was thinking and silently he agreed as well. He wouldn't mind spending the morning in bed, but it would have to wait until next time. He got out of bed and walked to the closet and grabbed his fresh clothes before going to the bathroom. Anko watched her boyfriend parade around in nothing but his boxers and grinned. Just because they couldn't stay in bed didn't mean she couldn't have some fun in the shower. She raced after him and jumped in the shower, surprising Naruto before she grabbed him and started kissing him again. Naruto, while surprised when she jumped into the shower, didn't complain and eagerly kissed her back. After breakfast they made her way over to Kurenai's house after Anko told Naruto that she had gotten used to picking her up in the morning. When they saw Kurenai waiting outside they hurried and greeted her a good morning. Kurenai greeted them back, and while she and Anko started talking, Naruto was deep in thought about training and the jutsu he was developing for several weeks now. He had made some great progress, but it still wasn't to the point that Naruto wanted. If he could pull this off he would have a jutsu capable of rivaling the Rasengan. He was giddy at the thought of having such a jutsu and couldn't wait to see it in action. His thoughts were interrupted when they arrived at the training grounds and seeing the rest of the gang waiting for them. Surprisingly, even Kakashi was on time, but that could have been because they had told him to meet several hours earlier than the normal hour. This seemed to be the only way to get him to be on time. Now that you're here we can start, Kakashi said from behind his orange book. He seemed not to notice the killing intent Anko and Kurenai sent his for reading such a book in front of them. He ignored it completely. Alright, like we said last night, each of us will take care of one field of training. Training will start with physical exercise with Guy, then we'll have one group with Kurenai for Genjutsu and the other group with Kakashi for Ninjutsu training. After switching between groups we'll have sparring matches between all of you to finish morning training. The afternoon training will be individual training if there aren't missions to complete. Asuma said. Yash, I'll make sure all of our students will be full of youthfullness. If I can't fullfill that promise, I'll run 1,000 laps around Konoha on my hands. Guy exclaimed loudly. Lee fully agreed that he would help his friends with their youthfulness even though he couldn't participate right now before he and Guy went off on another one of their crazy rants. After Anko had thrown several kunai at them they had calmed down enough to start the exercises. 3 hours later 10 genin and 2 chunin crashed down on the ground after a grueling training session with Guy. He had them run laps, sit-ups, push-ups, squats and every other exercise he could remember. Even Naruto, who had more stamina than all the rest, was feeling exhausted. He was sure his muscles would hurt tomorrow and wasn't looking forward to the exercises the next day. But he knew that Guy was an expert on these kind of things and it would help him get stronger. The others as well were feeling the burn of their muscles after such a hard training, but none of them really complained. They knew what was on stake and knew that they would benefit greatly from Guy's crazy training. Kurenai then took half of them with her so she could start on her lecture and teaching of Genjutsu. None of the genin really had any Genjutsu in their repertoire, so she could start from the very beginning, which was fine by her. She preferred starting from zero as that would allow her to use her own methods of teaching. She had never liked how the academy seemed to teach Genjutsu. Most genin thought that Genjutsu was just some fancy art especially used by women. Kurenai disagreed greatly with this. To her, Genjutsu was more than some fancy illusion used to distract an enemy. Genjutsu was about manipulating and bending reality so she could lure her opponent into her trap. It took a lot of effort and expertise to perfectly create a genjutsu that could trap an enemy. That's the reason why not many people are capable of becoming a true genjutsu user like she was. The rest of gang stayed with Kakashi, who would show them some jutsu and then they could practice it until they mastered it. After thinking for a while, Kakashi decided to teach them the Shunshin no Jutsu, knowing that this was a very useful jutsu to know. That and he wasn't willing to start with an offense jutsu straight from the start. When Naruto said he had already mastered the jutsu, Kakashi asked him if he could help him to show it to the other and help when necessary. Naruto nodded and started to help Kiba out, who seemed to have trouble using the jutsu. A few minutes later, Kakashi went over to Naruto wanting to ask him some questions. Hey Naruto, you have a minute? Kakashi asked. Sure thing Kakashi-sensei, what do you need? Naruto said, smiling. He liked Kakashi. The man was laid back and somewhat lazy, but Naruto could see just how skilled the man truly was. And after Kakashi had told him some stories about his time with his father, Naruto considered the man a friend. I was wondering if you would be willing to teach me that Kaden jutsu of yours. The one you used during the preliminaries of the Chunin exam. Kakashi asked, wondering. You mean the Kaden Bakuhatsu Nenshoku Hotaru no Jutsu? Naruto said, thinking back at that fight. Yeah, that one. I'd understand if you rather not teach it to anyone. Kakashi said, nodding. No, I don't mind as long as you don't copy it without asking. As a matter of fact, why don't I teach it to everyone? Naruto said, smiling. If you're willing to teach them your jutsu, then I wouldn't dream of stopping you. In return, I'll teach you some of my more advanced jutsu. Kakashi answered. You've got yourself a deal, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said before he left to help out Sakura. Kakashi smiled and left to inform the other Junin-sensei that Naruto was willing to teach them some of his personal jutsu. Anko and Kurenai weren't surprised since they knew that Naruto was that kind of guy, but Asuma and Guy were a little surprised. After all, teaching a jutsu that you've made yourself was something not a lot of shinobi did. Anko explained that Naruto didn't have a problem with people knowing some of his jutsu as long as they worked hard for it. If Kakashi had just copied it without asking, Naruto would be less friendly about it. Kakashi then assured them that he wouldn't do such a thing to a fellow shinobi, and especially not to the son of the man he respected so much. Anko then said that Kakashi wasn't the only Sharingan user and that Naruto wouldn't allow Sasuke to copy jutsu from him or anybody else for that matter. Kakashi nodded and said that he would talk to Sasuke when he got released from the hospital in a few days. They ended the team training for that day and the team split up, promising to meet each other later that day to go and visit Sasuke in the hospital. Opinions were different on the last member of their group, but after talking a bit about it, most of them had decided to give the boy another chance. If he wasn't willing to adapt and socialize, then they wouldn't have to feel guilty about it if he didn't fit in the group. At least they would have given him a chance, which was probably more than he would be willing to do for them. Still, Naruto's words from the day before lingered in their minds, which is why they would have to see what would happen, though none of them were truly optimistic about it. Naruto, teammate and their two Junin-sensei went off to their usual training place to continue their daily training as a team. The three genin, a dog and a chunin, were still pretty exhausted from the morning training, but none of them dared to complain. They had been given a chance to prove themselves worthy of Konoha and none of them wanted to disappoint. Together they would go all the way and come out on top of this challenge. Once at the training field, Naruto was asked by Hinata to help her with her taijutsu training while Kiba and Shino agreed to another spar together. Naruto happily agreed to help Hinata as he was curious to see just how much she had improved while he was gone. Naruto and Hinata were both taking their stance, patiently waiting for the other to attack first. Naruto caved in first and shot forward, trying to catch Hinata off guard with a punch. Hinata, who had expected that Naruto would make the first move, calmly blocked the punch and tried to hit several of his tenketsu and pressure points, but before she could make her move she had to duck under follow-up punch from her opponent. Not wanting to back up now, Hinata pressed forward, aiming a Juken-induced punch at Naruto's stomach only to miss him by a mere inch as Naruto had twisted his body to the right. Naruto grabbed her wrist, only to twist it, effectively holding her in an arm lock, but he hadn't counted on Hinata's flexibility and he felt the slight touch of Hinata's fingers hit him in the upper part of his other arm. Immediately Naruto felt an immense pain, forcing him to let go of Hinata, who didn't lose a second before continuing her attack. Naruto winced at the pain in his arm before backing up, trying to evade and block the incoming attack. Backing up a little, he relaxed when he felt the pain in his arm disappear, allowing him to freely use it again. He saw that Hinata was about to launch another attack and he grinned slightly. Though Hinata had improved greatly with her new style, she was still not fully used to it and she needed more experience as well, giving him an advantage over her. His own style, while completely different, had been completed and Naruto was comfortable using it, and that would make all the difference in this fight. One other thing that Naruto had was a high tolerance of pain thanks to Anko's training in the forest all those months ago. Even if Hinata hit some of his pressure points, as long as the pain was tolerable, he would be capable of blocking or grabbing her. And this was exactly what he was planning to do. He easily evaded the first few punches and blocked a few others before Hinata got a hit or two. To her surprise, however, Naruto didn't seem to notice or feel anything and he grabbed both of her arms before pulling her close and planting his knee in her stomach, effectively ending the match as she was unable to get up from the attack. Naruto sat next to her, rubbing her back, trying to help her deal with the pain. When she regained her breath, he stopped and got up, standing in front of her. Hinata-chan, that was great. You've surprised me several times during the fight. Well done. Naruto said, honestly impressed with the girl's progress. But you still beat me so easily. I trained so hard and I still lose most of my fights. Hinata said, softly, visibly disappointed with her performance. Don't be like that, Hinata-chan, you did great. The only reason why I beat you is that you're still developing your style and it's still foreign to you. Once you get fully used to it, you'll be able to use it its full power. Naruto said, placing his hand on her shoulder. Another thing is that your style only uses the hands, this makes it easy to predict the attacks. If your hands get incapacitated, you lose the advantage. Maybe you should incorporate some kicks as well. Naruto is right, Hinata. Your style is still far from completed, so you still have time to adjust it where necessary. Just work on getting used to using it and things will work out. Kurenai said supportively. The rest of the training was used for another spar and some taijutsu training until they received some unexpected visitors on the training ground. While the kids were training, Jiraiya, Tsunade and the Sandaime had arrived as they were checking up on the teams. Tsunade also wanted to reassure everybody that Lee was going to be okay after a few operations but would be unable to join them until he was fully healed. Naruto and the rest were happy to hear the good news and chuckled when Tsunade complained about her headache after informing Guy and Lee. Everyone in Konoha knew about loud and enthusiastic nature. Yes, well, the reason we came to see you is that Jiraiya here has some business with Anko and you. Sandaime said to Naruto. Jiraiya gulped at the thought of informing Anko of his plan to take Naruto out of the village for a whole 3 years. Sure, what's up, Aro Sennin? Naruto said, earning a glare from Jiraiya and a grin from Tsunade. I think we'd better discuss this in private, Gaki. Jiraiya said while giving the rest of the team an apologetic look. That's okay, Aro Sennin, I trust them with my life and I'm going to tell them anyway if I'm allowed. Naruto said, shrugging. If you're sure, Naruto. Jiraiya said hesitantly. Inwardly he thought this to be a good thing as Kurenai could help restrain Anko from killing him on the spot. Like we agreed before we left in search of Tsunade here, we'll make your apprenticeship official in the coming days. Unfortunately, my duties to Konoha require me to travel in order to keep up with my spy network, meaning that I can't train you properly. The genin from Team 8 were shocked that one of the Sannin would personally train Naruto. They always knew Naruto would go far, but to be trained by one of the legendary Sannin was nothing short of amazing. Still, they wondered why Naruto had been chosen to get such an honor but refrained from saying anything at the moment. They were sure Naruto would explain later on if he was allowed to talk about it. Kurenai, who had been told by Anko about this, wasn't surprised by the news, but she felt very proud of her students at the moment. Sure, they had grown a great deal since she started to teach them, but jealousy and envy were human emotions, but she was glad that none of her team seemed to have these feelings when they heard the news. She wondered how the other genin would react to this news and couldn't help but imagine a certain Uchiha reacting badly. So what's the plan then, Aro Sennin? Naruto asked, confused. I'll be gone for the next 6 months, but I'll leave you with a training schedule and enough material to keep you busy until my return. When I return however I want to start your full training with me and trust me when I say that I won't go easy on you Gaki. Jiraiya said grinning. Naruto wasn't intimidated however and grinned right back with a smirk that clearly said, give it your best shot. So in 6 months you'll be back and then we'll start training together. Sounds fine with me, Aro Sennin. Naruto said happily. Jiraiya, you need to tell the whole story otherwise I'll do it for you and you won't like the results. Tsunade threatened. Jiraiya seemed to shrink under her glare and started sweating. You Naruto, I seems to have forgotten a small detail. Jiraiya said laughing nervously. You see, I can't stay in the village for a long period of time so I would like to take you on a training trip. Jiraiya was already glancing at Anko who seemed to become very interested in the conversation. She didn't like where this was going, she could tell something wasn't right as she saw Jiraiya flinch when she looked at him. A training trip. I guess a few weeks away from the village wouldn't be that bad. Naruto shrugged. Ah no, that's not what I mean. It would be a little bit longer. Jiraiya said trying to stall some time before receiving the beating of a lifetime. Tsunade however was looking forward to seeing the pervert beaten to an inch of his life and decided to interfere a bit. What the pervert is trying to say is that he wants to take you on a 3-year training trip outside of Konoha. Tsunade said almost laughing loudly at seeing Jiraiya's face lose all color turning as white as snow. The Sandame too couldn't help but let out a small chuckle seeing the horror on his student's face. Though he did take a few steps back from Jiraiya so he wouldn't get caught in the crossfire. 3 years. You want me to leave Konoha for 3 years? Are you crazy Aro Sennin? Naruto shouted. If you think that I'm going to let you take Naruto-kun with you then think again you damn pervert. Anko shouted at the same time. Now the rest of the team had taken their distance as well following the Sandame's example. Tsunade was having the time of her life watching Jiraiya who was trying to hide behind the Sandame only to be pushed back in front of Anko and Naruto. Why can't we train in Konoha? I mean, why do we need to leave? Naruto demanded to know. You better have a really good explanation for this pervert or else I'm going to enjoy testing my new kunai on you. Anko yelled as well. Now Anko and Naruto, at least give Jiraiya the chance to explain his reasoning for wanting to take Naruto out of the village. Sandame said trying to calm everyone down so they could talk like adult. Kurenai as well was trying to calm Anko down while Kiba, Shino and Hinata were taking care of Naruto. It took them a few minutes but they had finally calmed down enough to hear Jiraiya out. Now, Jiraiya why don't you start from the beginning? Sandame said still smiling a bit. Well, it's simple really. Naruto, you're one of Akatsuki's targets you know this. While, for the rest of the genin training with their Junin sensei might be enough for now, you need to be on a whole other level. That's why I decided to make you my successor. Jiraiya said gulping when he saw Anko motioning to continue. But in order to do that I need time, it would take about 3 years for me to teach you my techniques. I can't do that when we're in the village as you would have to do missions and other training as well. One other reason is that I want to keep your whereabouts hidden from Akatsuki as well. Wait, I thought Hokage-sama said that Akatsuki's goals were unknown but you just said that Naruto is one of their targets. What do you mean by that? Kiba asked curiously. Hinata and Shino nodded showing that they too wanted to know why Naruto was one of their targets. We don't know their ultimate goal but we do know that they are after people like Naruto. People with a biju sealed inside them however we don't know what they are planning to do with the biju. Sandame said sighing. He had wanted to keep that part of the information hidden a little longer but figured that they would have found out sooner or later. You have to understand Naruto that you're facing an enormously powerful enemy. These are S-ranked Nukenin we're talking about, normal training won't cut it. Your teammates will be there to help you but to be absolutely sure you'll need to be stronger than everyone. You'll need to be strong enough to deal with such adversaries on your own. Jiraiya sighed. He understood Naruto's feelings about not wanting to leave the village and his loved ones for so long but he really thought this was the only way to ensure his survival. Can you guarantee that Naruto will be strong enough to defeat them after those 3 years? Anko said softly. She had been listening to Jiraiya's explanation and no matter how much she hated it, she had to agree that what he said made sense. Anko-chan, you can't be serious. Naruto said shocked that she would even consider Jiraiya's idea. Naruto-kun, Don't get me wrong, I don't want you to leave Konoha and me. As a matter of fact, I would hate it if you left for so long, but you have to agree that what pervert says makes sense. Anko said before hugging him. Akatsuki won't hold back any punches and you need to be as strong as possible to defeat them. They won't stop at nothing to get their hands on you, and the only way to win is to get stronger. But, Naruto said, trying to protest. Naruto, I understand your feelings, but sometimes we have to do what is best for everyone instead of what we want. That's the duty of the Hokage. Sandaime said solemnly. Training with Jiraiya will make you strong enough to protect your precious people and the village from the threat the Akatsuki represents. Who knows what would happen if they gathered all of the Biju? I know Ji-chan, but what about everyone here? What about the village? I can't just abandon everyone so I could leave on a training mission. Naruto sighed. Now you're just overreacting, Naruto-kun. Hinata said softly, blushing slightly when everyone turned to her. I mean, none of us would think that you would be abandoning anyone. On the contrary, you would be sacrificing a bit of your own happiness to ensure the survival of the village. Hinata's right. Kiba said. You would be performing your duty to the village to get stronger, just like we will with our training. Like Hinata and Kiba said, none of us would think you're abandoning us. Shino said, backing his teammates up as well. Naruto-kun, I think you should go on this training trip. Anko said softly. It's the only way to ensure you'll get strong enough. 3 years is a very long time and I'll miss you terribly, but if that's the sacrifice I gave to make to be able to grow old with you, then I'll gladly pay it. She then kissed him gently, letting him know that she hated the idea of him leaving, but she did think that it was the best course of action for now. Naruto held her tightly in his arms, wishing that things were differently, but knew that she was right. When he pulled back from her kiss, he smiled at her before nodding. Fine, Arrow Sennin, if you think that's what it'll takes to deal with those bastards, then I guess I've got no choice. Naruto said, looking at him. Very well, Gaki, prepare for one hell of a training trip. I'll be back in 6 months and then we'll start. Jiraiya said, relieved that he had lived through this conversation. He truly had expected Anko to go ballistic, but in the end things had worked out pretty well. At least that was what he thought, until he felt the unmistakable feeling of a kunai pressed against his most precious possession. He turned his head slowly, only to stare straight into Anko's eyes. He winced when he heard her whisper something in his ear. Get one thing straight, pervert. If my Naruto-kun comes back as a pervert or without visual improvement, I'll do every woman on this earth a favor by neutering you on the spot. Do I make myself clear? Anko threatened. Perfectly and crystal clear. Jiraiya squeaked loudly, making everyone laugh at his panicked voice. Jiraiya relaxed after she removed the kunai from between his legs and told Naruto that he would meet up with him the next day to give him his training schedule for the next 6 months. Naruto asked if he was allowed to continue training with the rest of the group as well, which Jiraiya didn't mind as long as he got his own work done as well. Jiraiya then left the group to do some research to ease his nerves after being threatened to be neutered by Anko. Of course, when he voiced this out loud, Tsunade just punched his lights out, sending him flying through the air. Sandaime shook his head, muttering something that sounded like, still behaving like children, before he too said his goodbyes for the day. Tsunade-sama, could I speak to you for a few minutes? Hinata asked, taking a step forward. She remembered what Naruto had said about Tsunade's medic nin project, and this was a good chance to talk to her about it. You're Hyuga Hinata, right? Tsunade asked, earning a nod from Hinata. What can I do for you? Naruto-kun told me that you would like to start a program to train medic nin, so I would like to join if possible. Hinata said nervously. You want to be a medic nin? Tsunade asked, interested. Hi, and I'm not the only one. 2 of my friends, Sakura-chan and Ino-chan, want to join as well. Hinata said with confidence, as she wanted to make a good impression. Tsunade was slightly shocked to hear that she already had found 3 people who wanted to become medic nin. She hadn't even talked about it with Shizune or Sandaime yet. Here was a girl and 2 of her friends who were eager to start learning. She could see it in the girl's eyes that she was serious about being a medic nin, and it pleased her greatly. Meet me at the Hokage's office tomorrow at 9 and we'll discuss your training then. Bring your 2 friends as well. Tsunade said while starting to leave. Hinata couldn't believe what she just heard. Tsunade had practically accepted the 3 of them as her students. Hinata couldn't help but feel immensely proud of herself and a huge smile appeared on her face. Before she had time to fully register what just happened, her teammates and senseis came over and congratulated her over and over again. Kurenai told her that since training was over for the day she should go inform both Sakura and Ino. Hinata smiled and nodded before racing off in search of her friends. Man, first Naruto and now Hinata as well. Catching up to you just became a lot harder. Kiba said looking at Naruto. Oh, don't worry Kiba, me and the rest of the Junin sensei will take good care of you. Anko said while grinning at him. Anko-chan is right Kiba, you'll become stronger as well since you'll be training with 5 Junin senseis. Naruto said clapping Kiba on the shoulder. Kiba cheered up after that and nodded. They were right after all, each Junin sensei had a lot to teach and they would become a lot stronger with their help. On top of that he still had training with his clan where he would learn a lot more techniques and jutsu as well. His thoughts were interrupted when Naruto's stomach declared to everyone that it needed food, much to Naruto's embarrassment. Laughing they all set off to have something to eat. Uchiha Sasuke was staring out the window with a pissed off look on his face. He had woken up that very morning feeling like crap. According to the nurse that had cleaned him up, much to his embarrassment, he had been in a comatose condition for several weeks and it was only thanks to Tsunade-sama that he was awake. While she was helping him into a pajama, again much to his embarrassment, she told him that Namikaze Naruto and Jiraiya of the Sannin had convinced her to come back to the village and that according to the rumors she was going to be the Godime Hokage. Sasuke tuned her out after that, as he was too angry at hearing that the dobi of the class had succeeded in bringing back a woman who was famous for leaving the village swearing she would never return. After she was done the nurse left him alone in his room saying that if he needed anything, she was only a press of a button away. This left Sasuke to think how he had gotten into this predicament. After racking his brain a bit he remembered what had happened and a scowl appeared on his face. Itachi had come back to the village and was not even interested in him. Sasuke had noticed how strange Kakashi had acted at the dango shop and on a whim, he decided to follow him. Imaging the surprise when he saw his older brother, the one who had killed all those Sasuke held dear, standing there right in front of him, like he was challenging him to attack. He was about to attack his brother when he heard Itachi say that he wasn't interested in him but instead wanted to know where Naruto was. That had shocked Sasuke more than anything and it angered him even more and he could not hold it back any longer. To his surprise Itachi did not even move a muscle and just stood there waiting for him to strike. When Itachi grabbed his wrist and pulled him close Sasuke could not believe the difference in power between the two of them. The Chidori was his ultimate attack and his brother stopped it like it was nothing. Not only that but it seemed Itachi was bored beyond anything. Then the pain came. A broken wrist was painful enough but when he looked into Itachi's eye things just got worse. Small flashback. Do you know why you're weak, my foolish little brother? Itachi whispered in his ear. Sasuke was on his knees holding his broken wrist trying to bite the pain. It's because you lack hatred. Maybe this will help you improve a bit. Sasuke, who couldn't help but look up at that statement, looked right into Itachi's Sharingan. But this wasn't the same Sharingan as before. His Sharingan had changed and Sasuke found it impossible to avert his eyes. Next thing he knew he was standing in front of the scene he had witnessed all those years ago. Standing there was a younger Sasuke, his parents lying dead on the floor and a younger Itachi who just sheathed his Anbu sword. Welcome to the world of Tsukiyomi, my foolish little brother. A voice said. In here I control what happens. Do you remember this, Sasuke? Yes, this isn't a genjutsu or an illusion but my very memory of that night. What is going on here? Sasuke stammered, not wanting to see the murder of his parents again. This is a gift from me to you. To ensure you'll get stronger and that you won't forget what happened that night. The voice answered. In this world I control everything and for the next 72 hours you'll witness the death of our beloved father and mother over and over again. To Sasuke's horror, the scene changed and he saw how his older brother killed his mum and dad without hesitating and remorse. Repeatedly the scene replayed and Sasuke could help but let out a scream. This was torture beyond anything he had ever imagined. To see his parents getting murdered like he was there was just too much for the young boy and he fell to his knees and sobbed loudly. 71 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds remaining. The voice said and Sasuke screamed out in horror. In the real world, only a fraction of a second had passed, but when Kakashi and the other Junin heard Sasuke scream and collapse, they knew something was very wrong. To Sasuke, however, the world had turned black and he slipped into a comatose condition. End flashback. Sasuke shook his head, hoping to forget the horrors he had seen during his brother's attack. He instead focused on the fact that his brother was searching for Naruto and wondered what was so special about the blonde shinobi. Just thinking about him pissed Sasuke off. The blonde shinobi had changed so much in the last year that it was almost like he was a whole new person. Ever since he started training with that purple-haired woman, Naruto had undergone a transformation. He still remembered the day he encountered them in that shinobi-only shop where Naruto told him that he defeated a Chunin-level shinobi and that he was granted his Genin status because of it. At that time, he didn't know it, but now he knew the Chunin was Mizuki, one of their academy teachers. The man was not that powerful, but he was a Chunin nonetheless. Sasuke had no doubt he could beat him now, but wondered if he could have beaten him when he came straight out of the academy. The important thing was that since that day in the shop, Sasuke had seen the change in the dobi, and it made him nervous. How did Naruto get so strong in so little time? He furiously thought. After that, he didn't see Naruto for quite some time. Actually, it wasn't until the first test of the Chunin exam that he saw Naruto again, and he could see that Naruto had gotten stronger. He even had heard some rumors that one of the C-rank missions that Naruto and Team 8 had done turned into a higher rank and that they had faced and defeated an incredible powerful Nukenin. Although he didn't want to believe it at that time, it was confirmed later on that Naruto had defeated and killed one of the Onikyudai Chunin from the Mist and Momochi Zabuza, a high-level Junin. I can't believe he defeated an A-rank Nukenin. How did he get so powerful? Sasuke scowled. But it was during Naruto's match with Gaara that he saw a bit of Naruto's true power. The technique that he used was devastatingly powerful. It not only destroyed the sand shield that covered Gaara but also blew him away into the wall. Moreover, Kakashi's proclamation that the Rasengan was vastly superior to the Chidori in terms of power angered Sasuke even more. However, the invasion had been a great way to test his strength against strong adversaries, and he proved to himself that he too was strong by defeating several of the invading shinobi. It didn't matter to him that he ignored or disobeyed an order from a superior. All he wanted was to fight and to get stronger. When most of the shinobi were defeated, he had turned his attention to the fight between Orochimaru and the Sandaime. He had hoped to copy some jutsu with his Sharingan, but because of all the fighting he had used all his chakra and was unable to activate his Sharingan any longer. When he saw Naruto break through the barrier that had stopped several Anbu, he cursed loudly. Once again the Dobi had managed to surpass him, and it started to piss him off. That fight was beyond anything I could or can do. The jutsu, the taijutsu, kenjutsu, everything was above my level. Sasuke was so angry that he didn't notice that the cursed seal Orochimaru gave him in the Forest of Death had started to spread slightly. Seeing Naruto fight side by side with the Sandaime, defeating the Shadaime and Nadaime, and eventually Orochimaru himself had confirmed everything. The Dobi was anything but a Dobi. Instead, he was promoted to Chunin together with that lazy Nara, while he and Uchiha had been berated for disobeying an order. The final insult was when Naruto's parenthood was revealed to the village. The fact that Naruto was the son of the famous Yondaime Hokage seemed to make Naruto very popular all of a sudden. They used to treat him like dirt, and now they fall on their knees for him. Sasuke sneered. Although this wasn't the truth, Sasuke saw it that way. Many people had been reconsidering their feelings about Naruto, but many of the older people in the village were still wary around him. Son of the Yondaime or not, he still had the Kyuubi sealed inside him, and this made him dangerous. Still, they figured that it wouldn't be a good idea to openly show their hostility towards Naruto, as he had been gotten more popular with the younger crowd. The help Naruto provided after the invasion had helped a great deal in convincing people that he wasn't the Kyuubi after all. Sasuke continued to think and getting angry until a voice came from the doorway. Yo! Kakashi said lazily. He had been observing Sasuke for a few minutes, and what he saw didn't impress him. Apparently, Sasuke's anger was so great that it prevented him from noticing his surroundings, something that could get a shinobi killed. Kakashi didn't have to ask why Sasuke was so angry. It was written on his face and it showed in his eyes. HN. What do you want? Sasuke said with some malice in his voice. I'm glad that you're awake, Sasuke. You got us worried there for a moment. Kakashi said while entering the room. Whatever. Sasuke just turned his head back to the window and stayed silent. Yes, well, I came here to tell you that you'll be able to leave the hospital in a few days. Also starting then you'll be part of a special unit designed to defeat the group called Akatsuki. Kakashi said knowing that this would interest Sasuke. Akatsuki. What's that? Sasuke said curiously. Akatsuki is a group of S-rank Nukenin, one of whom is your brother and the man you saw next to him. We don't know their goal but it's safe to say that they are a threat to Konoha. Kakashi shrugged. When Sasuke heard that Itachi was part of this group he immediately agreed to join this group of elite fighters. He could already imagine the things he would learn while training with such a group. But he would have to make perfectly clear that Itachi was his to kill. He wouldn't allow anyone else that privilege. After all, only an Uchiha can defeat and kill an Uchiha. They were the elite of the elite, everyone knew that. He could already see Naruto's face when he told him that he was selected for a special unit. Beat that Dobi. He smirked. Meet us at training ground at 6 am when you get out. You will be training with Team 8, Team 10, Team Guy, Sakura and Naruto in physical training, ninjutsu, genjutsu and taijutsu. Kakashi continued. Wait a minute, you mean that this special unit is made out of genin? Sasuke all but shouted. That's right, Hokage-sama selected our teams personally saying that all of you have the potential to become strong enough to deal with S-rank Nukenin. Kakashi said smiling although his mask covered it. This can't be happening. Just when I thought I surpassed Naruto. Sasuke thought, his anger coming back in full force. Oh, one last thing Sasuke. You are forbidden to use the Sharingan to copy jutsu or any techniques from your fellow members of your group. Kakashi said seriously. What? You can be serious. Sasuke said loudly. I'm very serious Sasuke. Copying jutsu from enemies is one thing but to steal them from your friends and allies is a whole other thing. Trust me when I say that even I don't copy jutsu from fellow Konoha shinobi. To do so would not only be dishonorable but it would be an insult to those who worked hard to master those techniques in jutsu. Kakashi explained hoping Sasuke would understand what he was trying to say. So how do you expect me to learn new jutsu and get stronger? Huh? Sasuke said glaring at his sensei. By learning them like you did before you acquired the Sharingan. By practicing and training, then and only then will you truly master them. Kakashi patiently said. Besides Naruto and the rest won't allow you to copy their jutsu anyway. By now, Sasuke was fuming mad. First he heard that he would have to work and train with Naruto and the rest of those loser shinobi and then they forbade him from using his Sharingan, his birthright. Who cares if he copied a few jutsu? He was an Uchiha and the Sharingan was part of him. He would have to start thinking that they wanted to hinder him in his quest of getting stronger. This was preposterous in his opinion. Sasuke, I know you like to depend on your Sharingan but you really should learn how to fight without it. If you're strong enough to fight without it then you'll be twice as strong when you do use it. Kakashi said seeing how mad his student was getting. He really hoped that Sasuke would adapt and learn to work with the rest of the genin. Together they would be a force to be reckoned with but they needed flawless teamwork if they wanted to go against the Akatsuki. Think about what I said okay. Sasuke didn't bother to acknowledge Kakashi's parting and just continued to brood while staring out the window. Things were spiraling out of control and he needed to get back on track. He figured he could give this special unit a chance seeing that Kakashi and the rest of the Junin sensei were the best in their field so he should be able to pick up some useful stuff. But once he had learned everything they offered he would have to find another way to get stronger. By the time Naruto and his team had finished eating it had already gotten dark so they decided to go home for the night. Tomorrow would come soon enough and to be honest most of them were still tired and hurting from Guy's training that morning. After saying their goodbyes Anko and Naruto linked hands and walked towards Anko's apartment. Naruto however had been thinking about moving into the home his parents left him in their will. While nobody had lived there for a very long time Sandaime had someone clean it every once in a while so that when Naruto decided to move into the house it would be ready for him. While he loved Anko's apartment he found it to be a waste of time to pay rent every month while he had a house where they could live. Now that his heritage had been announced and most of the shock had passed, perhaps it was time to take the next step. When they arrived at the apartment, Naruto opened the door and went inside, still holding his girlfriend's hand. "Nay, Anko-chan, I've been thinking about something," Naruto said, not really knowing how to begin on the subject. "Thinking? About what?" Anko asked. "You know that my mom and dad left me their house, right?" Naruto asked, to which Anko just nodded. "How would you feel about living there? You want to move out? What about the apartment?" she asked curiously. She rather liked her place. It was cozy, not too big but not small either, and with Naruto here it finally felt like home. "Don't get me wrong, I love this place, but it seems kind of silly to pay rent when we can live together in a house, don't you think?" He shrugged. "I'm all for it, though I think it would be better if we visit the house first, don't you think?" "Do you know where it is?" Anko asked. "Yeah, Ji-chan told me where it located and that he paid for a genin team to clean it up every once in a while over the years." Naruto nodded. "Still, it couldn't hurt to check it out before we make a permanent decision." Anko nodded and hugged Naruto close. She knew how much this house meant for him. It was the house he was supposed to grow up in, a place he could call home with his parents, but unfortunately Kyuubi had destroyed that possibility when it attacked Konoha. She also knew that moving there would be an emotional happening, and she vowed to talk about it with him later on. It could wait until they had seen the state of the house. They spent the evening, just the two of them, talking and enjoying each other's company, knowing that in 6 months Naruto would have to leave on his training trip. They vowed to treasure the time they had together in the coming months. The next morning training went its normal way, with Guy yelling about the youthfulness of the genin and pushing them past their limits with his special training he had made for them. The kids, however, wanted nothing more than sit down and rest once they felt the pain in their muscles. Still they pulled trough, and Guy congratulated them for making it through the first part of his training. Sakura, Ino, Choji and Ten-Ten were horrified and could only imagine what the other parts would be and shivered in fear. The others weren't surprised at hearing about a second part, but still weren't very enthusiastic about it either. None of them dared to ask what the second part of the training was, however. At 8:30, however, Ino, Sakura and Hinata had to leave for the Hokage Tower to meet with Tsunade concerning their medical training. Guy gave them the thumbs up and praised their youthfulness to the heavens, shouting loudly, saying that Konoha's future was in their youthful hands, making all of them wonder about his sanity. The three girls hurried out of the training grounds, glad to be away from the self-proclaimed green beast of Konoha. When they arrived at the tower, Sakura, Ino and Hinata were starting to get nervous about the meeting. They would be meeting one of the legendary Sannin and discuss a possible training program for them. They weren't like Naruto, who seemed to meet legends of the shinobi world on regular basis, so they were understandably a little worried. After entering the tower, Hinata went over to the lady at the front desk and told her that they had a meeting with Tsunade at 9, to which the lady just motioned them to proceed and knock on the door. Together they stood in front of the door and gulped once before Sakura knocked politely. After receiving the okay to come inside, she opened the door and simultaneously they stepped inside. "Ah, good morning, girls. Tsunade told me about your meeting with her last night. She'll be here any minute, so why don't you sit down for a moment?" Sandame said, noticing how nervous the girls were. "Good morning, Hokage-sama," they said, sitting down. "Really, girls, there's nothing to be nervous about. Take Naruto for example, he never gets nervous around me," Sandame said with a smile. "Yes, but Naruto is hardly a normal person, is he?" Hinata said, laughing a bit, making the Sandame laugh loudly. She knew about the closeness Sandame and Naruto shared. "You might be right there, Hinata. He has always treated me like a grandfather instead of the leader of this village. In fact, I don't think he has ever called me Hokage-sama in all these years," Sandame said with a pensive look on his face. Sakura and Ino, who had always wondered why Naruto and the Hokage were so close, figured it was because Naruto was the son of the legendary Yondaime, so they didn't question it any further. Just then the door opened again and Tsunade and Shizune entered the room, making the three girls jump up from their seat, greeting both of the women. "Good morning, Tsunade-sama, Shizune-san," the three of them said together. "Well, I'm glad to see that the three of you aren't like a certain other blonde chunin we know," Tsunade said, glad that they at least showed her respect. "Come now, Tsunade-sama, you know Naruto-kun doesn't mean anything when he calls you Tsunade-bachan, that's just how he is." Shizune said, trying to defend Naruto. Yeah, whatever. Enough about the Gaki. Now you two must be Sakura and Ino, right? Getting affirmative nods, Tsunade continued. Hinata here told me that you're interested in becoming a medic nin just like her, is that correct? Another nod. Very well, tell me why you would think I should teach you. She said, pointed at Hinata. Well, I've always enjoyed making medicine from herbs ever since I was a little girl. But it wasn't until Naruto told me that a shinobi isn't just someone who kills or injures people that I started considering becoming a medic nin. I told him that I don't enjoy hurting other people and that maybe I should quit being a shinobi. She said, recalling the incident, making her chuckle a bit. He sure told me that day. He was furious at me for giving up so fast without trying and said that if I didn't like hurting people then I should learn healing them instead. Ever since that day I've tried to become the best kunoichi I can be. Becoming a medic nin isn't just a dream anymore, it has become one of my goals in life. Hinata finished proudly. Yes, the Gaki has a way with words, doesn't he? Tsunade said, smiling. She too had received one of Naruto's life-changing speeches after all. Hinata agreed with a smile and a nod. Alright, how about you, Sakura? I didn't get one of Naruto's speeches like Hinata, but I guess the reason why I want to become a medic nin is that I too want to keep my friends and family safe. If I can become a medic nin then I can help my teammates and friends when they're hurt, making sure that they come back home to me. To be honest, until the Chunin exams I was a useless fangirl chasing after Sasuke-kun, but I made a promise to Hinata-chan that I would change and become a kunoichi worthy of Konoha. Sakura said softly. She was a bit ashamed to talk about her fangirl period, but she needed to show that she had changed for the better, not only to Tsunade but also to Hinata. So you want to keep those you love safe and out of harm? Tsunade asked. Very well, and last but not least, Ino. My reason is about the same as Sakura, Tsunade-sama. Like her, I was chasing Sasuke instead of trying to be the best kunoichi I could be. I've been trying to rectify that ever since the Chunin exams. My teammates are my friends and I want them to be safe, and if I become a medic nin then I can make sure that none of them ever leave me. Ino said with confidence. Very good reasons indeed, but I have one last question for the three of you. Tsunade said, leaning back in her seat. Do you have what it takes to complete this training? She held up her hand showing she wasn't done yet. Let me tell you girls that being a medic nin isn't that simple. There will be times where you won't be able to help those in need. That no matter what you do there will be times that you won't be able to save your patient. Can you handle the responsibility of having to take decisions that could mean life or death? This is the duty and curse of a medic nin, now tell me, can you handle that? Aloud, yes, from the three girls was the answer, and Tsunade smiled while looking at Shizune, who nodded. They had been impressed with the three girls and their decision was clear. They would train them to be the next generation medic nin, they would entrust the future of Konoha to them by teaching them everything they knew. Slowly Tsunade stood up and walked in front of the girls, who looked up at Tsunade. Your training starts tomorrow. Be at the hospital at 4 p.m. Shizune will take care of your training in the beginning, but as you progress you'll be entrusted with working at the hospital. When I deem you ready I'll take over from Shizune and train you myself. You girls better be ready because we'll work you to the bone, do I make myself clear? Tsunade finished loudly. Hi, Tsunade-sama. The three yelled out equally loud. Very well, you're dismissed. Tsunade said. The girls nodded and bowed to Sandaime and the two women and left the office. Aloud, yes, we did it. Was heard a few seconds later, making Tsunade, Shizune and Sandaime chuckle. Tsunade liked the three girls and thought that if they would be able to finish the necessary training they would be wonderful medic nin and a valuable asset to Konoha. Becoming a medic nin was hard and not a lot of people would be able to complete the training. They certainly are motivated, aren't they? Shizune said, smiling. The three of them have made an enormous change over the past year. Sandaime said while taking out his pipe, much to Tsunade's displeasure. Let me guess, the Gaki played a role in their transformation. Tsunade said while waving her hand to prevent the smoke from reaching her. Indirectly, yes, he forced Hinata to confront her own feelings and in turn she forced Sakura to face her own feelings. Ino and Sakura however were rivals for years, but everything changed after the Chunin exams. Sandaime said. Ino was defeated by Uchiha Sasuke in the preliminaries where he attempted to use a Kaden jutsu against her. It seems she took his aggressive nature very badly and her feelings for the young man seemed to have lessened a great deal. You know, I haven't heard much good about this Sasuke. Do you think he'll be trouble? Tsunade inquired. Sasuke is obsessed with killing his brother and the trauma he suffered all those years ago make him rather unstable. I hope that he learns to open up to the rest of the genin, but I'm afraid that won't be so easy. Sandaime sighed. Maybe we should let Naruto-kun talk to him. Shizune said half jokingly half serious. Unfortunately that would prove to be even harder. Sasuke and Naruto have a complicated history together. During their academy days Sasuke was the best in class while Naruto, though not his fault, was dead last. Naruto saw Sasuke as a rival, someone he wanted to surpass, but Sasuke refused to acknowledge Naruto in any way. Then Naruto started training with Anko and got much stronger in only 6 months. That he not only surpassed Sasuke and became a Chunin before him must have been a huge shock to Sasuke, and it resulted in him starting to dislike Naruto even more, maybe even hating him. Sandaime explained to Tsunade and Shizune. The fact the dead last surpassed the Rookie of the Year must have been a tough nut to swallow for someone like Sasuke. Tsunade agreed. We'll see what happens, but you should know that Orochimaru has taken an interest in Sasuke and even gave him a cursed seal. This alone is reason for worrying, but as long as he doesn't do anything that could endanger Konoha there's nothing we can do. Sandaime said. Of course, Orochimaru has always been jealous of the Uchiha for their capability to copy jutsu. Tsunade said, understanding why her ex-teammate would be interested in Sasuke. Let's leave this subject for another time. Are you ready for tonight? No doubt rumors have already filled the village about you coming back. Sandaime said, making Tsunade groan. I'm as ready as I'll ever be, I guess. Tsunade sighed. She didn't look forward to the announcement that she would become the Godime. Sandaime nodded and together they started looking over the preparations they had made for the ceremony. The council had accepted Tsunade as Godime the night before, and to Sandaime's surprise none of them had any problems with her taking the position of Hokage. In the evening the rest of the village would know who their new leader would be, and Sandaime hoped that everything went fine as well. The whole village would be assembled, shinobi and civilians included. For the genin time went fast. Between training with the other teams and their own training the day was over before the genin realized it. The afternoon training was cut short so everyone could get ready for the ceremony that would take place later that evening. The girls needed time to put on their best kimono, and though the men needed less time to get ready, they too were dismissed to get ready. Anko and Naruto returned to her apartment after Kurenai and Anko had a small disagreement about what Anko would wear. Kurenai wanted that her friend put on her best kimono while Anko wanted nothing more than going in her usual outfit, saying that she wasn't a kimono girl. It took Naruto's help saying that he enjoyed seeing Anko in a kimono to get her to agree, and even that had been a huge victory for both Kurenai and Naruto. When they all were ready and assembled they traveled in group to the place where Tsunade would be announced as the Godime Hokage. On the way their fellow shinobi and villagers joined them and the atmosphere was somewhat tense but enjoyable. The village had recovered from the invasion and things were going great, so none of them were worried about the Sandaime's announcement. Of course the fact that rumors could be heard about Tsunade's return could have contributed to this. As shinobi the group managed to get a prime location and together the group waited for the Sandaime to make his appearance on the stage. People were talking loudly about what they thought was going to happen, and Naruto had to stifle a laugh and a grin when he heard some of the more outrageous things he heard. Finally the Sandaime arrived at the scene, and as soon as he approached the stage the crowd went silent. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the respect and authority his Ji-chan seemed to command, and hoped that by the time he got to be Hokage he too would be able to silence the whole village just by arriving. People of Konoha, I stand before you today with an announcement that will rock Konoha to its core. Sandaime began before he let out a small chuckle. Again. Most of the crowd smiled as well, knowing that their leader referred to the announcement he made some time before about Naruto's heritage. When he lifted his hands, the crowd went silent once again. Over the past few months I have seen Konoha at what might have been its weakest point and its strongest only a few days later. The invasion that threatened to destroy our beautiful village was a turning point for many of us. Sandaime said while quickly looking at Naruto, who smiled back at him. On the day of the invasion I was told that Konoha had become stagnant and that a change was necessary. I now see that person was right in saying that Konoha needed a change. People started talking amongst themselves wondering what Sandaime wanted to say. You see, I have been Hokage for many years and not once have I regretted becoming the protector of this village. I've considered it my privilege and my duty to ensure the safety and happiness of each and every one of you, though sometimes I have failed in my endeavors. Sandaime continued. And just like the almighty trees that surround our village, I've grown old and I feel that I'm unable to protect Konoha at a level that is necessary. It is for that reason that as of this moment effectively I, Sarutobi Mamoru, resign from my position as Hokage. To say the crowd was shocked at this announcement was a huge understatement. Even with several rumors going around, nobody had thought that their leader would resign today. People were starting to get nervous and most of them were wondering who would be their new leader and what would that leader be like. Almost everybody in the village adored the old Sandaime as he was fair to everyone and strict to those who deserved it. Sarutobi let them wonder for a moment before he tried to gain back control of the crowd. Once again he raised his arms asking for silence and their attention. It took a bit longer for the crowd to stop talking this time, but after several minutes people were finally quiet. I'm sure this comes as a huge shock to some of you and that most of you are worried about what will happen next. Sandaime said in his usual calming voice. I assure you, there is nothing to worry about as I already have chosen my successor. I have the utmost confidence that my successor will be everything this village need in a leader. There is no doubt in my mind that she will be a better leader than I was. People of Konoha, I present to you the Godime Hokage, my former student and member of the legendary Sannin Tsunade. Saying this, Sarutobi took a step back, allowing Tsunade to come forward so she could greet the crowd. At hearing that Tsunade, one of the legendary Sannin, would be their new leader, almost everybody in the crowd relaxed, knowing that she was able to defend the village in time of need. Not only that she was a direct descendant of the Shadaime Hokage, so being a Hokage was in her blood. A lot of people adored Tsunade, seeing she was an excellent kunoichi, a fabulous healer and an inspiration for many, so most of them were very excited to have her as their new leader. When Tsunade reached the stage, the crowd exploded into cheers and applause, showing her that the village approved of her becoming the next Hokage. People of Konoha, I thank you for your warm welcome. Tsunade began her speech. I won't bore you with a long speech like Sarutobi-sensei, seeing that I'm not used to speaking to such a large crowd just yet. People were laughing and smiling at seeing one of the Sannin standing there uncomfortably, and they started to encourage her by calling her name and clapping in their hands. From the front row, a loud, "You're doing great, Ba-chan," could be heard, courtesy of a blonde shinobi. Tsunade, who had heard Naruto's words, glared at him with a look that promised a lot of pain when she saw him again. Naruto just ignored the glare and continued laughing loudly. When I heard that Sarutobi-sensei had chosen me to be his successor, I first thought that he had finally lost it. She said, smirking at the man, and the crowd laughed again. But I soon realized that he only had the best interests of the village and everyone living in it at heart. He deemed me worthy of becoming the protector of this village, so after careful consideration and some encouragement from my closest friend and my precious people, she stopped and looked at Shizune and Naruto before continuing, I decided to take up the mantle and to become the Godime Hokage. I stand here before you today with a promise that as of this very moment I will protect Konoha and everybody who lives in this village with my very life. I promise you that as long as my heart beats and my lungs draw air, I will protect this village. And like one of my most precious people, I never break a promise. She said before bowing to the silent crowd. As one, Naruto and the gang started clapping, and soon the whole crowd was cheering at the top of their lungs. The celebrations that followed went on until the early morning hours, though Naruto and his friends didn't join in the partying as they had training the following morning.